This is the regular meeting of the Township of Morris Board of Adjustment for Monday, February 26, 2024. The legal notice required in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act has been satisfied, and a statement certifying same will be executed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Goldberg,
Here.
Ms. Rothman. Here. Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Schuster,
Here.
Mr. Trachtenberg,
Here.
Ms. Simmons,
Here.
Mr. Woodruff,
Here.
Mr. Oler,
Here.
Mr. Hanson,
Here.
Mr. Phillips.
Here.
My son is Santiago here.
Okay, first item of business is the consideration of several minutes from previous meetings. First is the minutes from October 23rd, 2023. Board members, any comments on the minutes? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Second is the minutes of the regular meeting on November 27th, 2023. Board members, any comments? If not, a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next is the minutes from the regular meeting of December 11th, 2023. Board members, any comments? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Trachtenberg. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next are several resolutions. Mr. Oler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first is with respect to a application filed by Scott and Sharon Bertram for property at 8 Hillview Terrace. The applicants applied to the board for permission to modify an existing non-conforming two-story dwelling by constructing a two-story addition to the rear and left side of the dwelling and to construct a raised open porch to the front and left side, requiring several variances with respect to front yard, side yard, combined side yard, building coverage, improved lot coverage, and of course, expansion of a non-conforming structure. For the reasons set forth in the resolution, that application was conditionally granted with our standard conditions.
Okay. Board members, any comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Somebody who would actually go.
Motion to approve.
Okay, do you have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, Ms. Santiago?
Mr. Goldberg.
Yes.
Ms. Rothman. Yes. Mr. Trachtenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
So moved.
The next resolution, again, a memorializing resolution with respect to the application filed by Patrick and Megan Lusignani with respect to property at 7 Old Glen Road. The applicants applied to the board for permission to modify an existing non-conforming dwelling by constructing a one-story second floor addition above an existing family room in the side yard of the property. It's created a side yard setback of 11 feet where 20 feet is required. Properties in the RA 11 single family zone, and for the reasons set forth in the resolution, that application was conditionally granted with our standard conditions.
Thank you. Board members, any comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Rothman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Ms. Santiago?
Mr. Goldberg,
Yes.
Ms. Rothman. Yes. Mr. Trachtenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, and the last one, again, a memorializing resolution with respect to the application filed by Stephanie Horman for property at 163 Western Avenue. She applied for permission to construct a detached 22 by 40 two-car garage creating a side yard setback of 3.72 feet where a 15-foot side yard setback is required, and to maintain an average height of 20.85 feet where the maximum height of an accessory structure may not exceed 15 feet. Properties in the RA 11 single family zone, and for the reasons that are set forth in the resolution, that application was conditionally granted with our standard conditions, as well as conditions indicating that the garage may not be used for any living space, that no plumbing may be extended into the garage without approval of the Township Engineering Department or the board, and that prior to the issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall confirm the stormwater management plan is satisfactory with the Township Engineering Department.
Okay, board members, any comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trachtenberg. The second,
Second.
thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Ms. Santiago?
Mr. Goldberg,
Yes.
Ms. Rothman,
Yes.
Mr. Trachtenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Schuster,
Yes.
Mr. Woodruff.
Yes.
So moved.
Okay, now moving to the public hearings. The first is BA 26-23. Ms. Santiago?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is BA 26-23, Jonathan Block. Block 3103, lot 60, C0061, 1 Wheatsheaf Farm Road in the PRC zone for section C. Applicant proposes installation of a whole house generator in the front yard where no accessory structure shall be located closer than the minimum front yard requirement and the actual front yard setback of the principal structure.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Attorney Rose.
Are both of you going to be testifying?
I'm the
Is the
attorney
attorney.
and my
Okay.
client will be.
Oh, okay. Sorry, can I have your appearance, please?
Attorney Rosemary Stone-Dow is with the law firm of A.I. Strauss. Here tonight on behalf of the applicant, who is to my right, Mr. Jonathan Block. In regards to the property, Madam Secretary just indicated we're here tonight on a request for a whole house generator. And as board members may see in their package, the issue we have is my client's property, given its townhouse. Anywhere we put the generator, we are technically in a front yard. So therefore, we have to come in front of the board to show you why we would like it and where we would like to install it. But as my client here with me tonight, if we could have them sworn in.
Sure. Mr. Block, would you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give for this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Would you state your full name for the record, please?
Jonathan Block.
Thanks. Why don't you guys have a seat, get comfortable? And Rosemary, if you wouldn't mind, I don't think that microphone's on, but if you would push that button in the middle, the green light will come on. There you go. You're good.
Thank you. Before I sit down, though, we did prepare an exhibit that I'll just pass out when Board's with the A1 is 18 pages. And I made plenty of copies for the professionals as well.
I'll just give here, I'll pass some the one way and pass some the other.
David,
Yes.
Yeah. 18 pages.
Give me one more.
One
So,
more, one more.
Counselor, just to give you an idea, the 18 pages, the first page is just the proposed location of the generator, subject to ultimately the HOA's approval as to the exact location, and then other generators within the community and what the generator specs are that are for the generator being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Black, can you just, by way of background, let the board know when you bought your unit?
Just 1 second. Do we want to mark that as,
It's A1 and it is
Okay.
A1.
okay. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
March 1st of 22.
And when you bought your unit, it had been advertised to you that it was approved to have a generator installation for the unit, correct?
Yes, I was told that the prior owner had done the research, had a quotation and approval to install a generator.
However, when you went to install the generator, to obtain the permit for the generator, I should say, you found out that that information wasn't exactly accurate, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you,
Excuse me, one moment. I need you to speak into the microphone because we're being recorded, okay? Thank you.
So prior to applying for the permit for the generator, did you contact the management company for your HOA in regards to the process?
Yes, contacted Integra. The manager was Scott Virchow and was told about the process. And we were told where we could place the generator relative to the structure and that a permit would be required.
And is that what the first page of the package is this is the side of your unit, correct?
Yes, this is the side of the unit.
And this is what you were informed by your HOA would be the approximate location that could be approved to put a generator, correct?
Correct. It's a little different because this unit is unlike some of the other units in that there's a utility access in the middle of the unit for the association. So there's a general utility room for lighting, sprinkler system, and water main in the center of the building, which makes this building an exception to the balance of the other buildings. Thus, it has to either go to the front or to the back.
And either way, front or back, you're still stuck with the same problem as far as you're on the end, correct?
Correct.
What's the 3 streets that your townhouse faces?
It faces Wheat Sheaf Farm Road is the front. We have Deborah and Cadena.
Correct. And so in speaking to the HOA management company, it was determined it was better to go a little closer to the front versus to the back, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So can you flip over to the next page? Okay. This is 3 Wheat Sheaf Farm Road, correct?
Yes.
This is literally the townhouse that is adjoining your townhouse, correct?
Yes.
And they currently have a generator on their side,
They do,
correct?
they do.
And is that, all these pictures in here, just for purposes of the record, are pictures that you took yourself, correct? Except for the aerials, which are done by Google Earth, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the next page, this is the 3 front facade, and the page after it is their generator, which is the unit adjacent to yours, correct?
That's correct.
And are the type of generator you're looking to propose similar to the generator that they have?
It's almost exactly the same. It's the modern version, the updated version of that generator. Yes.
And how big would the pad be approximately for the generator?
Approximately 3 by 5 feet.
Okay. And then in here, you also have, just for the board, some other units within your association that also have a similar situation with the generators and their placement, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so next you took some pictures. Which location is this?
This one is 6 Wheat Sheaf.
Okay, and that one's located on the side, correct?
And it backs onto Deborah. Yeah.
And it backs onto Deborah,
Yeah.
correct? And then there is some, as you show in your picture, some buffering, correct, around the generator?
Yes. And the HOA told me that I'd be required to do the same thing so that it would have shrubbery basically burying the generator so it wouldn't be visible.
And can you just tell the board why you would like to have a whole house generator for your unit?
Sure. Having been a resident of Morris County for 40 years, in Morris Township, Florham Park, Cedar Knolls, and back to Morristown, I've had the occurrences of being without power from anywhere from 3 to 14 days, depending upon storms and the like. And now that myself and my wife work from home as well, at least 60% of the time, it's very, very critical that we have continuous access to power. She's a medical researcher particularly and runs her business via video conference. So the ability to maintain that continuity is very, very important. In addition to which we have relatives who have not come to visit because they come with a nurse and support and can't be in a house without backup generation.
And then the rest of the packet here, you just have a few more examples within your HOA, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then I believe you also took a picture of a similar single-family residential house on Deborah as well that has the same issue with where their generator is placed, correct?
Correct, because that was a corner property and it was literally up the street on Deborah and Alexandria. And it's a side, it's on the side of the house, but it's on the, what I would perceive to be the front by definition and clearly visible from the street.
And then the end of the packet is just the type of generator that you're looking to install, correct?
That's correct.
And these are some of the specs of the generator,
Yes,
okay? And this is a generator that you already made an application, a permit for the municipality with, correct?
Yes.
And you did receive a denial for that pending if the board were to approve your application, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So is there any way on your property, I know we've looked through this, is there any way we can make the generator be in a compliant location on your property?
I don't think by the definition that, no.
And that's the quandary, Mr. Chairman, members of the board,
Okay.
and that's why we're here tonight seeking the variance, as Madam Secretary already indicated. Unfortunately, a generator is considered an accessory structure, and with that being said, we're either violating the minimum front yard setback, and or we have it on the outside of where the principal building structure line is. No other way we can place the generator on the property. The applicant's willing to make sure it's obviously fully screened, and as a condition of any approval of this board, he then has to get his final HOA approval, which they will not entertain or grant until after this board has action as far as the type of shrubbery and the activity that the HOA will also require.
Okay. So, in A1, the, metal doors on the front page, the metal doors with the light over it, is that the utility room you were referring to?
It is, yes.
And how far is that, door from the, your, air conditioning condenser? Approximately how much?
It's approximately 15 to 20 feet,
Okay.
maybe 20 plus feet. It's basically dead center in the side of the building.
Right. I'm just wondering, is there enough room to put it back there? And, but I guess that's conditioned upon what type of things does the, association has stored back there?
I don't think, again.
Do they need, how much access do they need to get into? They need something large to get back in there.
I can't answer that question. I've never really seen them go in there other than to see some maintenance people on rare occasion go in to adjust sprinklers or to adjust the lighting remote panel or possibly to do some other types of inspections, but they don't contact me and I have no knowledge of when they go in or out or what they do there.
Okay. But they indicated they want the generator further towards the street, your street, Old Wheat Chief.
Well, actually, I had a contractor come in and evaluate the property, and they suggested this location because of the access to the main gas line.
Right.
And then we presented, the contractor and I, to the association, this particular presentation, and they preliminarily approved it almost 9 months ago.
Okay. And
At that time.
they approved that location.
They did, with the contingency that we do shrubbery around the generator at that point.
Okay. So they wouldn't be responsible for the shrubbery, you would?
Yes.
Would they maintain it or would you maintain it?
My understanding is they would maintain it because it's part of the maintenance of shrubbery on the property,
Okay.
but it would have to be installed at my expense.
All right, board members, any questions of the applicant?
No. I just have a clarifying question.
Sure.
From the application itself, it says, the answer to question 5 in the packet on page 2, it says the generator will be placed behind the existing brick wall by the AC condenser shielded out of sight. Then there's a picture in the packet of sort of the, not the packet you handed out tonight, but the one that was in our packet of this little brick wall area back here. Is that where you originally intended to put it? Because I'm just trying to, I'm a little confused about the brick wall that's being referred to.
The brick wall is the surround that kind of masks the entrance into this utility area. And it creates a little bit of a difficult extension, if you will. So the running of the gas line to the generator, so far as the contractor was concerned, would be more efficient if it were up to the front, because again, I'm not an expert, but my understanding was the gas line to the generator is easier to the short run, and then the electrical line from the generator and then into the house is easier and more flexible to run. That's what was explained to me.
And then also for clarification, the HOA had some concern about the exact placement with the way the wall is as far as access in and out of that utility area. Because originally the idea was if we could completely shield it, it obviously would make for a better presentation to the board and would obviously be better for the client as well. But given this unique factor that his unit has with that utility room, it was either, as Mr. Chairman said, going much further to the back behind the AC condenser or bringing it up closer to the road.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other board members with questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of comments
Sure.
on it. Couple of things, if the board's inclined to vote in favor of the application for additional conditions, would be that the association should sign the owner's consent form in our application package. Currently, the applicant signed it, Mr. Block signed it, but that should be signed by the association as the owner. Also, you would then have to provide us with a copy of written approval from the association for the installation of the generator in the same location as the board would be approving. And also, condition to install landscape buffer supposed to the satisfaction of the township engineering department, with an indication from the association that they will maintain it. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Hanson, do you have anything to add?
Just following back on the wall questions or comments from Mr. Goldberg. This entire development has a 8-foot high brick wall around it. You will not be able to see this unit from Deborah. You won't see it from Kadena. The only way you'll see this is through his proposed bushes once you're on Wheat Chief Road itself.
Right.
It's one of those secure, it was supposed to be security and privacy fencing and walls around this development. And he's stuck in a spot where he's got basically 3 frontages, and he doesn't own the frontage away from where his house is, because the next unit is right next door. So this is the only viable location to put it.
Right.
It ends up being in the front yard, but it won't be seen by the general public.
Right.
So I have no problem with it. And it's just, we had to go through the process to approve the generator. All the other generators he spoke about in the development, HOA gave their approval before I made my recommendation, and I made sure that all the noise was less than what was required by our ordinance to the next adjacent residential unit that was out there.
Okay, thank you.
And his unit, as proposed, is fine for noise.
Thank you. Yours was the first building built in that development, wasn't
Yes.
That's what I'm told.
Yes.
it?
That's why he's got the utility room.
That's what I figured, but I also remember it being built. Okay. Board members, any comments, questions?
No. I'd like, if no one has any, I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We got to open it to the public.
Oh.
Members of the public, any questions? Any comments? Close the public portion. Now, Mr. Schuster.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this application with the conditions Mr. Aller has set forth.
Thank you. Okay. Schuster,
And Williams,
yes.
okay.
Santiago, roll call?
Mr. Goldberg,
Yes.
Ms. Rockman,
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Schuster.
Yes.
Mr. Trachtenberg,
Yes.
Ms. Simmons. Yes. Mr. Woodford.
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
I moved through his house.
Yeah.
Okay, the next application is BA-22-23 Hanover Estates. Santiago.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Next application is BA 2223 Hanover Estates LLC, Block 10302, lots 1 through 4, 245-251 East Hanover Avenue in the R87 zone for Section D and C. Applicant proposes construction of 9 townhouse units, creating a front yard setback of 21 feet where 25 feet is required, and proposed impervious coverage of 60.6% where 55 feet is required.
Okay, Mr. Brady.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. If I can, I'll give a brief overview of the application. I'm here, I'm Peter Firma Brady and Coriel on behalf of the applicant, Hanover Estates LLC. Property in question is 245-251 East Hanover Avenue, which is block 10302, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. Property is in the RA7 zone, which is zoned for single-family detached residences on 7,500 square foot lots. Lots about 225 feet wide and 150 feet deep with 33,750 square feet. It's on the south side of East Hanover Avenue, which I have to note is a county road, heavily traveled commuter type of throughway. I in fact travel every day in my office. The property is on the same side as this piece of property, a combination of single family, 2-family, and businesses. Across the street is the county garage, and then a little further down the road is a large retail facility. Behind it is all residential. Historically, the property was used as a junkyard, Pagano's junkyard. That operated until about the year 2000. And then between 2000 and about 2005, all cars and the associated materials were pulled off the site. And I think there was a building also that was knocked down. We have a licensed site remediation professional, which, as you may know, is kind of a unique animal in the environmental setting. Licensed site remediation professional is kind of a hybrid, part private and part public, meaning they are certified and licensed to come up with plans that the DEP then does not go through a long review and back and forth process. He basically accepts those plans and then audits them at some point after they're filed. He has indicated that he's working on a remedial action work plan and a health and safety plan that will allow development of the site.
Are you saying that you have an LSRP who's going to testify?
I did not bring him to testify, Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Oliver, because our approach is that's going to be a condition of, we cannot get the RAW that allows this use for residential purposes, then we're going to have to come back and rethink. So this board aren't experts on environmental things. The DEP is, and his certifications and licensing is with the DEP.
So you don't have an you don't have an RAO yet?
I don't have an it's an RAW actually is the newest terminology, remedial action work plan.
Yeah.
I've spoken to him. I have a letter from him that indicates what we're doing. There's no indication that we're not going to be able to do it. Proposal is 2 buildings containing 9 essential essentially townhouse style units. 7 are market units, 2 are low and moderate income units. We have 1 and 2 garages for all the units except for the low and moderate income units because those units are stacked, not vertical like the others. Courtyard style arrangement with the buildings facing each other with the parking and driveway in between them. And the end of the building facing Hanover with 1 driveway onto that busy road and buffering and landscaping. We do have some variances in Santiago. We viewed them briefly. I've just put them on the record. We've got a use variance because this is a single family detached dwelling zone. We've got essentially a density variance where 7,500 square feet per family is required. We have 3,750 square feet per family. As indicated, the front yard to Hanover Avenue is 21 feet, whereas 25 feet is required, although I'll note that the rear, they're greater than the required 25 feet. The impervious coverage is 60.8% with the addition of a trash enclosure that's been added since the plans were originally put together. 55% is the maximum on that. Again, I'll note though that the building coverage is compliant. We have some steep slopes that are being disturbed. I'll note there that they're man-made, and Mr. Summer will talk about that. In the rear, we have an 8-foot buffer rather than a 10-foot buffer, and the parking stalls are 9 by 18 rather than the required 10 by 20. I have 3 witnesses tonight: Rusty Schumer, our professional engineer, Kevin Paul, our architect, and Mr. McDonough, who hopefully will finish in Parsippany and get here in time as our planner. My client is available in the audience, but I'm not planning on having any testimony if he's here in case we get into some question the professionals can't answer.
Mr. Oler, can I ask you a question before we proceed?
Mhm.
So applications that I've heard previously, and just in my experience, usually we're dealing with a property that has a letter of a no further action from DEP.
Mhm.
I have never seen this situation before, but that's not to say. So can you elaborate on
So
the process when we don't know if the site, site hasn't even, doesn't have a plan yet even to be clean to residential
Right.
standards?
So the Board of Adjustment doesn't have jurisdiction over the DEP issues, right?
Obviously.
Because it's an outside agency and any approval will be conditioned on obtaining DEP permits as needed. And I don't believe it's in our checklist that they produce any kind of no further action letter or RAO or RAW, or seems to change monthly. But, that's, if it's not in our checklist, we can't require it to deem the application complete. We can hear it. I would suggest to you that the applicant must feel pretty strongly that they will get that, because this process costs them a lot of money. And if they're wrong, they have to come back again or just never build what they want to build to a residential use. Right? So it does have to be cleaned up to a residential standard, not a commercial standard. So it's a little more than a commercial standard. And if they can't get there, then they'll have to come back with a different plan.
The LSRP indicates we can get there and is in the process of putting together the RAW, the Remedial Action Work Plan.
Okay.
If there's no further questions, I'll call Mr. Schomer as my first witness.
Trustee, would you stand, raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
And your full name for the record, please.
Richard Schomer Jr.
Thank you.
And Mr. Schomer will be testifying as an engineer, the
You'll
engineer?
be testifying as an engineer, yes.
Okay.
So if you could, for the record, you've been here a lot of times, Mr. Schomer, but I like it on that mic.
Now, we have had him qualified as an engineer many times, so you can
Okay.
skip.
Okay.
Schomer, your license is still current?
Yes, it is.
Yes, thank you.
If you would, Rusty, if you could talk a little bit to the board about the site location, the surrounding uses, and then get into the site itself.
Sure. I think I'm okay, Sonia, just to share.
You can
what I-
share your screen, yes.
Okay.
Is that microphone on?
That one.
Sounds like it is. Okay. So let me try to do this.
Can you?
Pardon?
Are you in Zoom?
Yes,
You are in Zoom.
but I'm not going to turn my camera on. Do I need to turn my camera on? No, I didn't think so. And I'm not on with my audio, I'm just in the Zoom meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Let me check. You're not as a panelist?
Yes, it said I'm as a panelist. Yes.
Okay, all right. So you could share.
So there we go. It worked. Look
Okay.
at that. I love it when it works. Okay. Good evening. Okay. I have a few different exhibits and I'll identify them as we go through. First, this is an aerial exhibit with today's date. And I'll zoom in a couple of spots here, but basically there's two views.
Hey, Rusty, before you get to
Yeah.
Dave, do we have hard copies of this too?
I emailed these to Sonia earlier today.
Okay,
So
so
you do have them.
everything you're about to show, we have
Yes,
separately, okay,
you have it electronically.
okay, so,
You want me to share with you?
well, yeah, I would like you to email it to me.
Sure.
But I'm just curious, if we have members of the public, how do they see it if we only have an emailed version? Don't you need a hard copy from them so that it's in the file?
I will, yeah.
Yeah, right? So we'll need a hard copy.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, no problem.
And then as we go, we're going to, each slide, I guess, would be of A1, 2, 3, et
Yes,
cetera. Okay,
yes,
so
yeah.
if you would just describe what A1 is, then for the record.
Okay, A1 is an aerial exhibit, labeled aerial exhibit with today's date. There's two views on this particular exhibit, one with existing conditions and one with the proposed development superimposed. So I was going to start with that, and let me zoom in here. So these, okay. Doesn't move at the same speed on, okay. So this exhibit shows, it's a split view on the left-hand side, shows the existing site. Here, sort of in the middle of the page, the property consists of 4 lots, block 10302, lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if I zoom in a little more, you can identify these lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 as we look at this exhibit. The lots have a total frontage combined, and we're going to be dealing with all 4 lots. A total frontage combined of 225 feet on East Hanover Avenue, and East Hanover Avenue is on the front of the site here. Just for direction, north is kind of to the bottom of the page. The total site area of the 4 lots combined is 33,750 square feet. Each of these lots, you can see, was created fairly consistently with the lots around them. We're in the RA7 zone, which is a 7,500 square foot minimum lot size. Lots 2, 3, and 4 are consistent with the 50-foot width of other lots around them. Lot 1 is a little bit wider, and it's slightly wider because you can see here, maybe I should zoom in more. A little easier to see. It looks more zoomed on my screen. So Cedar Street, which is behind us, used to extend through to East Hanover Avenue, and Cedar Street was vacated. So at the time that road was vacated, half of the right-of-way went to Lot 1, and half of it went to an adjoining lot, Lot 12 in Block 10302.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Was it deeded to those, that lot, or how was that done?
There was not a deed that I know of. I believe it was just because of the ordinance vacating the street. By an operation of law, the street gets split down the middle and half. to
Okay,
each
so
side.
there wasn't any, like, it would be encompassed in any township resolution vacating the street? Is that it? You don't have
I do
a,
not have that, but if I need to get a copy of, for the board's records, I can get one.
you think we need one?
Do you have a title binder that
I
certifies?
did not participate in the acquisition of the property.
The ordinance will be fine.
There was a survey, property survey done, which was submitted as part of the application.
Right, but the survey can say this is the line, and we just want to make sure it is the line.
Sure. So as I said, the property consists of those 4 lots. It's in the RA7 zone, and I'm just going to zoom back out. We can kind of look at both of these views, again showing the property. The properties to the west on East Hanover Avenue and to the rear behind us are single-family properties, single-family dwellings. To the east, or as we look at this to the left of us, is a commercial property. That's the acupuncture facility site. To the west of, or to the east of that are some single-family homes until you reach Monroe Street, and then you get to more commercial to the east of that. As Mr. Brady indicated, East Hanover Avenue is a county road. It's a heavily traveled 4-lane road. It is also the municipal boundary between Morris Township and and Hanover Township. Across the street, directly across the street, is the county garage. There are other commercial uses, office buildings, retail facilities in the vicinity in Hanover Township. The property was originally a sand and gravel borrow pit, so the property was excavated for those uses. After that, it was used as a automobile scrapyard. That use ended in about the year 2000. It's currently vacant, and any of the facilities that were on the site have been removed, so it's overgrown a little bit. There are some trees at some of the perimeters, but basically it's a vacant site. As Mr. Brady indicated, the applicant has engaged an LSRP, licensed site remediation professional. He's done investigations, done testing, and basically the plan is that any impacted soils from past activities will be removed from the site. And then one of the remedial or accepted remedial practices is the capping of the site. And the capping of the site, similar to what is being proposed by this application, is an accepted remedial action. And so it helps helps serve the site from that standpoint, and it can be used for residential purposes. But as Mr. Brady indicated, the LSRP has to go through preparation and submittal and go through that entire process to get a final sign-off from the DEP. What I'd like to do is go to one of the, I have to change sharing and just share. Go to a different plan, specifically, let me show this. Bear with me a second. Looking for the right. Trying to get the right plan I want to show here, and for some reason it's not popping up. Why is this? What I wanted to display for you, and I don't know why it's appearing on my screen, it doesn't appear on your screen. What I'll do is this. Just going back to this exhibit, and I want to enlarge. What I wanted to show is that on the plans that we submitted was a steep slopes area, and looking at that plan, what we see is, and it's sheet 2 of the plans that were submitted, and for some reason it doesn't want to appear here. I guess that won't pop up if I share that. It doesn't just share my screen. Let me try, I'm sorry, bear with me one second. Let me try one other thing. I should share screen. Okay, there we go. So this is sheet 2 of the plans. And these are the plans that were submitted. This is existing conditions. And what this shows on the left-hand side, if you have the plans, what this shows is existing features, and it shows where we did an analysis of the steep slopes. The property slopes up from East Hanover Avenue, and which is at the bottom of the page, up to the rear. There's about a 12-foot difference in grade from the front portion to the rear. And what you can see with the colorization of the steep slope areas is the band of steep slopes that exists here was really the result of past activities, namely the borrow pit activities, which created this embankment. So these steep slopes are really a man-made condition. And this really does generally delineate the activities that took place or where they took place, which is towards the front of the property, in front of this band of steep slopes. And that's where basically the prior salvage yard activities took place. Behind this was really less disturbed. But again, these steep slope areas were man-made from prior site activities.
You said it was a borrow pit. That means that material was excavated from that site, correct?
Sand and gravel was excavated from this site.
And then some sort of fill was placed back in afterwards?
There was some fill that was placed after that was excavated, after that process or that activity stopped, then there was some fill placed back into the site. And so we are proposing disturbance of these steep slopes. Again, they're not natural steep slopes, but that's a waiver we are requesting relief from under the township ordinance. Right now, there's nothing on the site. There's no infrastructure. There's no other features like wetlands or waters or streams or water bodies or anything like that to be dealing with also. So let me go from there, and I want to then go.
And was that A2 for the record? Was that?
It was part of the plans.
This is part of the plan.
Part of the plan.
A2, and in here, and see it's rendered, but what we have is rendered too, right?
Correct.
So
That
it's exactly
like
what we
colorization,
have.
I
right?
think it's exactly the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, it looks like this.
It is.
So just
It is.
refer
I
to that
didn't-
as sheet 2, but not A2.
Pardon? It's
So
sheet number
it's
2, yes.
Sheet number 2, not
Yes.
A2.
Correct. Sheet two of the plans that were submitted.
We're talking about the current site, and it's abandoned auto salvage yard. Is it fenced? And if so, what kind of fencing?
It is fenced. There's chain link fence around the site today. And as I said, it's currently vacant. So this isn't another exhibit. This is entitled Site Plan Exhibit with today's date. And shows it's basically zoomed in to the site showing the proposed development. So, and this is what I'll refer to for the most part. We can zoom in and look at it more closely if that's helpful. And if there's something that you want to zoom in, we can do that. So again, we have a vacant site and the proposal is 2 buildings, 7 market units, 2 affordable housing units. So we have sort of four portions of each unit. So units 1 through 4 on the left-hand side, units 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 and 9 in the back right-hand corner is the location for 2 affordable units, one one-bedroom unit and 1 3-bedroom unit in the affordable housing unit. And those are stacked one over the others. The other 7 units are pretty much standard townhouses. They're vertical, so they're divided with vertical walls, but the entire unit is the townhouse unit. Again, as Mr. Brady indicated, we're in the RA7 zone, 7,500 square feet per family. and the proposal is 3,750 square feet per family, and you'll hear more about that from our planner when he testifies. The property will be owned by a homeowners association, so all of the common property will be maintained. So this is pretty much a standard townhouse type arrangement. As you can see, we have a single two-way access driveway off of East Hanover Avenue. We reviewed the access with the county, and this was the form of access that they preferred. We looked at some options with them, and this is this two-way driveway. It's a 28-foot wide driveway, and this is what they preferred in terms of access. Building setbacks. The front yard setback, as Mr. Brady indicated, is 21 feet, and that's the closest point of the face of the building to East Hanover Avenue. The RA7 zone by comparison is 25 feet, so we're just a little bit short of that. However, the side yard setback and rear yard setbacks conform with the RA7 standards. So the side yard setback we show is closest at 12.5 feet, and the RA7 standard is 10 feet. So we meet the side yard setback of the RA7 zone. The rear yard setback requirement in the RA7 is 25 feet, and we have our buildings at the closest point at 28 feet. So we're compliant with the side and rear yard setbacks, and those are the sides that are closest to adjoining residential properties. So the only setback relief we're seeking is the front, the 21 versus 25 feet towards East Hanover Avenue. Building coverage is compliant. The RA7 permits 30% building coverage, and we comply with that limitation. We are a little over on impervious coverage, where 55% is permitted in the RA7 zone, 60.8% is proposed on this plan. And I'm kind of giving you the numbers. Our planner will go through more detail about the variances when he testifies. So we've had this property we've looked at with a couple different options and how to lay it out. We've had a few meetings with the TCC, and we actually came up with this layout as the preferred layout. The reason for that is we have an internal courtyard area. The two buildings face a common courtyard. We're looking at the ends of the buildings facing East Hanover Avenue, so we don't have a long, solid mass of building all fronting on East Hanover Avenue. We're actually looking at two ends of the buildings. So this arrangement we thought worked better, was a better layout with the buildings facing an interior courtyard. And we'll look at architectural elevations of the ends, and so we get a better sense of that, and our architect will present that. This is, as I mentioned, the property slopes up from East Hanover Avenue to the rear, and there's about a 12-foot difference in grade from front to back. And so what we've done is we've tucked this into the hill. So at the back of the property, you can see we show a retaining wall at the back. We also show retaining walls along the right and left side. So this is the back of the development, and where we have some parking spaces, and basically the back adjacent to the units will be tucked into the hill. And we will have a retaining wall, which will be about 4 to 5 feet high at the maximum. And on top of that retaining wall, we also have a 4-foot privacy fence. Now, we do have the fence and the wall staggered from each other, so they're not right on top of each other. There's a setback, so they don't count as a single structure. But what that effectively does is, by having the back of the site about 4 to 5 feet lower than the rear property line, it tucks this into the hill. It effectively screens and hides the parking at the back. And with the fence on top, effectively, you really won't see the first floor of these units from, if you were on the adjacent property, for example, to the behind this, and looking to here, with the way that the topography is, and with the wall and with the fence, you're not going to really be seeing the first floor of the units, and that's going to be effective right from the start, from day one. We also have landscaping along the back and at the perimeters. So the walls, the topography with this being set into the grade and the fencing will really do a good job of shielding the parking, shielding the units from the adjacent properties, really on the three sides.
The fence goes around all three sides of the property.
That's correct, yes. And the wall goes around most of the three sides. There's a little bit in the back where we didn't need the wall, but it does slope down. And the unit 4, for example, is still tucked into the hill. The market end units, which is unit 1, unit 4, and unit 5, those there's 3 of them. They'll have 2-car garages. From the RSIS standpoint, that counts as 3.5 parking spaces when you have a 2-car garage and the spaces in front of them available for parking. The middle 4 units will have 1-car garages. So from a parking standpoint, you get to account as 2. And then the affordable units will have surface parking. In total, when we add all this up, we have a total requirement of parking on site of 26 spaces. And by calculation, because of how the RSIS counts the parking, we actually end up with a proposed of 26.5 spaces. Obviously, we don't have a half space anywhere, but again, that's because of the factor that the RSIS uses for a 2-car garage with the 2 parking spaces in front of it. They don't count it as 4, they count it as 3.5. So we meet the parking requirement for the project. Now, the parking spaces we are showing are 9 by 18, which in the industry is standard, and I know you hear this all the time. But technically, we need a variance relief on the size of the parking spaces. This was submitted to the fire chief. He provided a letter and found that the arrangement was acceptable. We also reviewed this with the Public Works Department, and this was something that we came out of the TCC reviews with your engineer and planner, and the Public Works Department said that this is a suitable arrangement for trash pickup. And just on that note, we're not proposing a dumpster. We did not want to have a dumpster on this project, so trash will be kept in the garages. And for the affordable units, we actually have a trash enclosure at the back right corner of the project that can provide containment for trash in there. But DPW found that they could get in and out of this site. Again, we did review it with the county. We still have to get approval from the county planning board. But we did review it with them in terms of access. We looked at a couple of different arrangements for access, and they preferred this as the best arrangement to get in and out of the site. Along the county road, along the frontage of East Hanover Avenue, we're going to have new sidewalks and curbing is going to be installed. This exhibit is consistent with the landscape plan that we prepared, and so we also show some street trees along East Hanover Avenue. As I said, the site is vacant. The middle part and what I showed you from the topography where it's been disturbed, there's not much there other than it's overgrown. There are trees around the perimeter. We did include in the plans a tree removal and replacement plan. 21 trees are going to be removed based on the calculations from your ordinance that requires a replacement count of 73 trees. Our goal is to meet that replacement requirement as much as we can through the planting of trees and through upsizing of trees. And we'll get as close as we can to the replacement requirement on site. And to the extent we can't meet all of that, there's a formula for providing a contribution for the remaining trees per the ordinance. Landscaping, I mentioned a little bit about the buffering at the back and along the sides. And again, we've got landscaping, we've got retaining walls, we've got the units set down into the hill, and we have a fence on top of the wall, so that provides, we believe, a good screening. And for example, at the back, again, you're going to have that lower portion of the units well hidden from neighboring properties. The landscaping plan was submitted as part of the application. It was, we followed the township's do not plant list and no invasive species and so forth, so we're compliant there. We are proposing 3 new light fixtures internally, and those will be in the courtyard area. So that keeps them more hidden from view from the neighbors. All of the lights will be dark sky compliant. And given that we have a homeowners association that can control the lighting on the units, so that we won't have floodlights blaring off somewhere. It'll all be controlled and under the guidance of the homeowners association, so that all the lights can be dark sky compliant.
And the lights that are on poles are 12 feet tall, correct?
You know, I don't remember.
Okay.
I'd have to look at the plan. I can
I
pull it
asked
up.
it because that's how I read it.
Okay, all right. They're 12 to 15 feet at the most, which is consistent with what we do in the township. We try to keep the lighting levels fairly low, you know, more like a single-family residential type of neighborhood. We're not going to have floodlights. People will have lights at doorways, but again, they'll all be in compliance with the HOA standards. But the lighting having a courtyard type of arrangement, and you can see here, I didn't really get into this, but we have breaks between the units and then a larger break. We're actually going to step the buildings, have a break in the buildings as it goes up the hill to work with the topography. All the utility connections will be through or come off of East Hanover Avenue. We have a letter from the Southeast Morris County MUA about water service, and they can provide water service. So that'll be detailed with them. Because we're proposing buildings and pavement and so forth on the project, we have to deal with stormwater runoff. So we have a stormwater management plan. We submitted a stormwater management plan as part of the application to the township. And what we're showing, and you can see in the center portion of the courtyard, you can see the texture is a little different in some of this pavement. And what we're proposing is to use porous pavement in this center area. So porous pavement is an accepted best management practice by the DEP. It's a green infrastructure practice accepted. It helps with collecting runoff. It helps with treatment, water quality treatment. So we collect the runoff. We have underground storage system underneath under the porous pavement, so that the water gets soaked in. It's stored in there, so that what we have at the end of the day is less runoff from the site than occurs today. So we went through that calculation, that analysis that's detailed in the stormwater management report that was submitted, as I say. But the use of porous pavement really helps to mitigate the increase in impervious coverage on the site, and it's very effective for that purpose. And again, it is recognized as a best management practice by the DEP and the township, RSIS, and so forth.
I think the
So that-
Environmental Commission mentioned something about a swale, and I think that needs to be clarified a little bit.
Well, because as I mentioned, we're building this into the hill at the left side and on the right side. Everything still does pitch down toward East Hanover Avenue. We have some swales really just for management of stormwater to help direct it. So the general flow of water is all toward East Hanover Avenue. We're going to collect the area in the courtyard. We're going to collect some of the building areas into the courtyard and into the stormwater system under the courtyard. And then we'd have some stormwater collection systems in the front and at the sides that will collect and connect into the county drainage system in East Hanover Avenue. And when we do the analysis, what we see is what we collect and what we store on site doesn't convert to runoff. We balance that against some areas that do run off, and at the end of the day, we have less runoff from the site under developed conditions than we do under existing conditions. There'll be no, as a result, there's no negative impacts to adjacent properties or flooding results, flooding impacts as a result of this. We're not in a flood hazard area. There's no flooding concerns here. As I mentioned, we do need approval from the Morris County Planning Board, Morris County Soil Conservation District. So those who, if we're successful, those would certainly be conditions of approval. We had, as I indicated, some TCC reports. We went to a few TCC meetings, which helped to develop this scheme and provided good input. I mentioned the letter from the fire chief and the letter from the Morris County MUA, Southeast Morris County MUA, and the Environmental Commission. I think I kind of hit on items that may have come up in their letter. If I missed something, please ask me about it. But I think that's pretty much what I have
Hit
at
all
the moment.
Points that I've checked off.
Okay.
So can you explain to us when you said they're going to be capping the property?
Yes.
What does that entail?
Well, the construction of buildings and pavement on the property serves as a cap over the property, and the placement of soil in the other areas serves as a cap. So the LSRP that's been engaged on the property indicated that capping is a accepted remedial from the, I'm not an LSRP, so I may not use the right terms, but is an accepted action for what we're dealing with on this property.
Okay, so you're saying that the buildings itself would be part of the cap?
Yes.
And
The
what about,
buildings- Mr. Chairman, the buildings will not have basements.
right, I've noticed that in the plans. What about the concrete, the asphalt in the center that you said is porous?
Yes.
Will that be a cap, is that cap-worthy material, or can water come back up through it?
Water won't come back up through it. It'll be a means for water, rainwater that falls or is collected on the surface to get collected into a storage system underneath of that for stormwater control.
Okay, when you say the storage system, is that going to be an enclosed tank?
It's actually mostly stone with some piping, yes.
And will that prevent water from leaching out of the soil and into that collection point?
Yeah, there's no issues with groundwater here. The testing that was done indicated that groundwater is I would say very deep on this site, so we don't have a danger of groundwater being collected into this system. So
What about other pollutants possibly leaching out from water coming into the site?
From my understanding of this is an acceptable practice for this use, given what's on the site and that based on what the LSRP did and the testing that they did.
Okay. Would that all be before the DEP? As far as stormwater runoff, would they be considering these plans when they?
Yes, yes, they will be considering these plans.
Okay. Now, could you point out the 8 parking spaces that are not on driveways or in garages?
So there's again on the. I'm going to zoom in. Does it help if I zoom in a little bit?
Please.
So let me just move this over. So the affordable units are 8 and 9 on the upper right-hand side here, and there are 3 parking spaces in front and 5 parking spaces along the back. So those are 8 surface parking spaces.
Okay. Now, if you assume that both units 8 and 9 have 2 vehicles, that basically leaves 4 free spaces.
If they have 4, if they're occupying 4, then there would be 4 remaining.
Okay.
That's correct.
What's the requirement for guest parking?
Visitor parking is required at 0.5 per unit, and we counted that in the analysis. So if you look at the parking demand for 3-bedroom units, and we assumed all of these are 3-bedroom units, they will be 2 to 3-bedroom units, but we
Right.
took the worst case. All of the market units being 3-bedroom units require 2.4 parking spaces per unit. The 1-bedroom unit requires 1.8, and then the visitor parking requirement is 0.5 per unit. So there's 9 units, 0.5, it's 4.5. You go through that analysis and you come up with a requirement of 26 spaces.
Right. But 26 spaces, 18 of which are basically for the 7 other units, correct? I mean, they're not general, you just can't just pull in and park anywhere in those 18, in those 26 units. Basically, 2 or 3 are reserved for each of the other units.
You've got garage spaces and a space in front of the garage, so those would typically those will go with the units. And then
Right.
you have the 8 spaces for units 8 and 9.
Right.
Guest parking.
Okay.
In fact, some of the surface parking in front of the garages for the 2-car garages is 20 feet wide, correct?
The space,
If you go down and look at the front.
there
Yeah,
are.
but Mr. Brady, nobody else will park there, because how can you put a car in front of somebody else's garage?
No, I said the units with the garages, the spaces in front of those are typically for those units. But for units 8 and 9, and for guest parking, that's the other 8 spaces.
Okay.
And one of the affordable units, one is a 1-bedroom and one is a 3-bedroom as required.
All right, let me get back to mine.
So for the affordable units, are the spaces allocated and designated? Are they just part of those general 8, like first come, first serve, or are there actually dedicated spots for the affordable units directly in front?
I don't think we really landed on that as to how, if they could be. I mean, you could designate 1 for the 1-bedroom and 2 for the 3-bedroom. You could do that. We hadn't designated that, but that's certainly something that could be done. And then the others are open for parking.
Can we assume it's Thanksgiving? Where's the nearest place that someone could park a car and walk to this development if they cannot find parking?
Where's the nearest place? Where's the nearest public parking spot? Offhand, I don't
There's
know.
because there's no on-street parking.
Correct.
So, and there's no real neighborhood connection to this site, correct?
It doesn't connect to an adjacent road, but it fronts on East Hanover. But not unlike other townhouse developments where you have limited parking.
Sure, they all have limited parking, but sometimes they just have it exactly the same amount, and sometimes they have more. So,
And there's a sidewalk in the front, correct?
There's a sidewalk in the front, correct. We're putting a sidewalk across the frontage of this property, yes.
And you have enough room.
There's a sidewalk on the other side of Hanover that goes down to the retail area that on a Thanksgiving afternoon is probably there.
Right. But then you get across Hanover Avenue.
There's a light and a crosswalk because I've crossed it myself.
Okay. And then that's by the acupuncturist, or just straight down from the
Yeah, it's
acupuncturist?
right where the, I don't know if Rusty can zoom out.
Well, this doesn't show the entire neighborhood. Do you want to see?
Next to the
If it
county
shows
garage.
the-
He's right.
If it shows the East Hanover where there's a stop light right at the corner where the
Yeah, this
county
exhibit,
garage.
I can pull up the other exhibit, but there is a light there and parking at the retail
There's a
area.
light there
Right.
for the
Yes.
crosswalk.
Is there any requirement for any handicap designated parking?
I'll let the Rusty answer.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Rich, are you aware? David, are
I don't
you
know,
aware?
Dave may know that.
No, no, James Place and Hovnanian didn't have to put in any handicap parking spaces.
Okay.
What about E EV?
The units can be made EV ready, so the garage parking can be EV ready
Well, you have to do that now anyway, right, for the condos?
for a certain number, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any surface, like the 5 in the rear, do any of those?
We didn't designate any of those, but if those could be, or a couple of
Yeah.
those could be wired for EV ready.
Oh, it would give you a credit, right, towards some parking. I know you're saying you don't need it, but
Right.
you're hearing from the board that when you look at it, it's pretty underparked.
Mhm.
So when you just staying with the parking for a minute, when you look at those 5 parking spaces to the rear and
on
the
the end.
parking spaces coming out of the corner units,
Mhm.
how tight will the back bumpers be on the 5 corner, if you numbered them 1 to 5, left to right,
Mhm.
space number 1 and number 5, trying to back out of there if you have cars parked.
The
in
two here,
driveways.
that you're talking about, the two at the one, your number 5 and the one at the top here of this.
Yeah,
of
the
the
two,
row
That-
three.
that-
the two
corner
corners,
is-
and then you have cars parked in what I'll call the driveways, right, of the units. So, and you're showing the 18-foot long space instead of the required 20-foot.
Right.
And the 18 feet, you're measuring right from the garage door, and, people tend
Well,
to
that's
park
on this
maybe
side,
not
right.
touching the door. So how does that car either get into that space or back out of that space?
At the one in the garage here over by unit 4, we actually have 21 feet depth from the garage, from the building itself out to the first space. So there's actually 21 feet there. The spaces themselves are 9 by 18. Cars are not 18 feet long, as we know. So that space, so we have room there to back out, or there's room in front of unit 4. The other one I think you're mentioning are the two at the other corner. Again, they are 9 by 18, but we have an extra very wide area in the middle area. So we have between sort of what would be the back of the parking in the garage, say for unit 4, and the parking space in front of units 8 and 9, we have 45 feet of distance. So there's room to back up out of these areas to maneuver. But this arrangement is the same as you see in any parking lot where you have the corner type arrangement like you have out in the lot here behind the municipal building, 9 by 18 spaces, and they're 90 degrees to each other. That's the common arrangement you see in parking lots all around.
Right, so it's your testimony that someone parked in one of those 5 parking spaces could somehow turn around in the middle of that court?
Yes. Yeah, you could do it a couple ways. You could back straight out and turn around. You could back and turn. The courtyard area here.
Without going into the garage areas, assuming
Correct.
that there's cars parked there.
Correct. Staying out of those areas. Correct. Because the width there is it's not just a 24-foot aisle like you have, for example, in a parking lot, where you back out and you back out and then you turn to leave. This is 45 feet between the backs of the parking spaces, gives you a lot of room to maneuver in that area.
And let's assume that there's snow. Does it still have enough room?
Yes. Yeah. You're not going to leave the snow you're not going to pile the snow in the middle. You'd have to pile it off behind the curb.
Where does the snow go? Are you going to push it out to Hanover Avenue?
How's the plow guy going to do it? He may, there is a green area, as you can see. You can push it off to the sides into the green areas. And typically, if it gets, you push it off behind the curb where you can. If you have too heavy of a snowstorm, then you have to deal with that, and you may have to cart it away.
But you can't push it straight up, right? Because you have 5 cars you're blocking.
Right.
You can't drag it out. Hanover Avenue is a super busy street.
Yeah, you can't push it onto the street. That's true. Yeah, no, you can't push it onto the street. So you either have to put it behind the curbing on site, or you have to, if you have to move it off site.
Does the same maneuverability apply to a DPW garbage truck coming in there? Would they have to just pull in forward and then back out onto Hanover Ave? Or how would they navigate that top portion?
What they've indicated to us based on when they would pick up is that they would back in to the site off of East Hanover Avenue.
They
and
would
then pull
back
out.
in.
Yes,
So they'd come down Hanover, they'd stop
and
on
back in.
Hanover, and then back in.
Correct.
Was there a particular, you mentioned something about a particular time period when they were planning on picking that up?
They
That-
typically do this in either very early as the common time so that it's off hours. So that they're not going to do it in the middle of rush hour when there's heavy traffic on East Hanover Avenue.
Do we know what the schedule is for Hanover for trash pickup for the residences? 'Cause that would be a good indication of when they show up.
I'd have to get the time from them.
Yeah, and they don't stick to the times, as you well know. They could be anywhere within a 3-hour window.
But we did review this with them, and they've said this is how they would conduct the trash pickup.
Okay. Do we have a letter from them yet?
I do not have a letter. from them.
Can we get a letter from them, Mr. Brady?
Because
I will endeavor, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
because most of the garbage trucks now have the automatic lift, right?
Correct.
It's on one side of the truck.
Right,
So I don't know how they would back in and get both sides of the street.
right.
Or they'd have to they may have to pull the cans around on one side. Because the individual cans would be at each unit.
Right, but these guys won't get out of the truck and pull it
Oh, the
around.
one-arm bandit, they just.
Yeah.
It's a one-armed bandit, so if it's not, they'd have to have arrangements for trash all on one side for them to go in and do it. It's on their right side as they come in, as they're going forward. So let's discuss that with the Public Works also.
Okay.
Just one more question on the circulation, in terms of school pickup, a school bus, would they be backing in also? Or
No.
is it picking up on Hanover Avenue or?
I don't know where the school bus stops would be, so
Would be right at
I don't
the
know the answer to
driveway.
that. But they wouldn't, I'm sure they would not pull into the site.
Thank you.
Okay. You mentioned that there'd be screening and buffering, landscaping along the back rear and the two sides. What's the proposal for the front of the property between the buildings and Hanover?
So you can,
Because you're asking for 21 feet from the right of way
Mhm.
to the building. And you've got a sidewalk, which I assume is going to be 3 feet wide. So and then you've got a sidewalk coming out from the sides of the buildings. What kind of landscaping are you putting there to screen the buildings, buffer the buildings from the Hanover?
so the sidewalk is in the right of way. So the sidewalk is on the street side of the property line. So in that 21, the sidewalk's not within that 21 feet.
Okay,
We do have, and again, the grade does change as you go from East Hanover up to the units. And we actually, on the left-hand side here, we have a retaining wall, 3 to 4 foot maximum. So the buildings sit up. You're not just facing straight at them. So they're sitting a little higher. We have street trees, as I mentioned, shown here. And again, this is really a colorized version of the landscape plan. So we have some street trees and we have plantings in front of the units all across, and they're detailed on the landscape plan. We can look at that further if you'd like, but we have buffering and landscaping between the buildings and East Hanover Avenue there.
the other residential buildings along Hanover, how far are they set back from the right of way?
I don't have a survey of those, but we could, if we wanted to look at the exhibit we were looking at before. We could get a sense of some of these. So our property is here. Looking to the left, the acupuncture building, it looks fairly close. And again, in fact, let's go, because we show the units here. On this part of the exhibit, we show the units. So you can see, again, looking at the property to the left, it's very close. The property to the right is very close to East Hanover Avenue. Others appear, they're a little set back a little bit further. So it varies, but we're not much different than it looks like. Property to the left, the property lot 8, lot 9, lot 10 all appear to be similar setbacks. I don't have exact dimensions, but they appear to be similar. To the right, lot 12 is closer to the street. Lot 11 a little bit further back, as is 10 and 9. So you can see it varies along there, but nothing substantially different than the proposal here. They seem to be somewhat consistent with the, in the 25-foot range, which is where we are, except for at 21 feet at the closest part of the building. The building is stepped, so part of it would be at 21 and the rest would be further back.
I do notice the retaining wall to the left as you're entering the property,
Yes,
but I don't see any on the right,
there's none on the right, just on the left.
just on the left. And why is that?
We didn't need a retaining wall on the right because of the grade. So the grade's a little different on the left and the right side, but we needed it on the left-hand side. East Hanover Avenue does change grade from right to left. So it's a little higher on the right side, a little lower on the left side.
Okay. So how much of a slope, say, from where the visitors parking, the open spaces at the rear of the property, the 5 spaces back there, to basically the driveway and entering the premises before you get to the first 2 units? How much of an elevation is that?
The slope of the driveway is about 5%, more or less. You want to know the exact difference, how many feet it is? From one
Well, I would like to know the percentage, I think.
It's about 5%. Yeah, I think 5, maybe 5.5% is where we kept it, which is standard.
Is there any problem with that type of grade? Okay.
And that's partly why it's tucked into the hill so that it's lower in the back than natural grade.
All right, I don't have any more questions at this point. Board members, questions? Mr. Goldberg, I can see you're already
The
starting to
only
talk.
remaining question I have is, I know you mentioned the swale, and I know I heard you speak of it. Where is it exactly located again? Is it not
On each side,
visible?
on each side. So if you look at the property to the left of the left building and to the right of the right building, simply because the buildings are set and we want to pitch away from the building and we're pitching from the property line in a little bit. So it's simply to help collect water so it doesn't drain to the building. It's simply a surface water management feature to help
And I know
water from
yeah.
going where we don't want it to go.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I know the Environmental Commission was concerned about the maintenance of it. There was a comment in there about, something about removing the debris by hand if it was more than 2 inches. Like, is that, so that's something the HOA would be
The
responsible
HOA would be
for?
responsible for all of the grounds, yes. And the reason that note is there is that sometimes you can get debris collecting in the swale, so you just want to keep it clean.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Rusty, I just want to go back to those 5 parking spaces in the rear.
Sure.
And I know before you said you had 21 feet from the garage area, but that's only on the left side. On the right side, it's 18 feet.
Correct, yep.
And yet you have another like 2.5 feet where you could push that building back. is there a reason why you didn't go back to the setback line to give yourself another 2.5 feet?
We were trying to keep it compact, if you will. But if, certainly we could provide a little more space there, and
I just think
that's a
that
point, yeah.
back right parking
Yeah.
space and I know it's not coming out of a garage, but that last corner space, you know, those back bumpers are kind of like, to me, they look like they're going to line up.
Again, it's similar
on
to
those cars.
any normal parking lot.
Yeah.
But
But-
if we could, we have a 12.5-foot setback where 10 feet is permitted.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the RA
Yeah, so
7
you have a
zone. If we
couple of
moved it over
some
2.5
space.
feet,
Yeah.
it's doable,
Yeah.
yes.
I'm just wondering if,
If somebody parks his F-350 back there.
well, who knows? But
Forget it.
He parks in the middle spots.
Dave, you can't park there.
Yeah. Sorry.
I don't know, maybe it doesn't work that way, but maybe you should just look at, can you get a couple extra feet there?
Sure. Okay.
To help that.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I was looking at something else when you talked about trash before. So when the trash pickup occurs, said the truck would back in, and then for the affordable units that would come out of that container?
Since they don't have a garage to store
Right.
cans in, that's why we provided the enclosure.
All right, so then the trash pickup would have to get out of the truck and go get the cans? Is that what happens there?
They'd have to pull the cans out of the enclosure.
So you said, and you heard about the one-armed bandit thing,
Yes.
that's with the town pickup. Are you suggesting to use private pickup or municipal pickup?
When we talked to DPW, as I said, we spoke to them about trash pickup. It's something that came up at our TCC meeting. So we talked to them and they said, they thought this site was acceptable. They could back in and do it
But that's one of the letters
in
you're
off
gonna get
hours.
that
Right.
it'll
Yeah, no,
work.
I
And actually,
understand.
the HOA could require that everybody put their trash cans on a certain side of the entranceway.
Well, if that's what we're going to do, I would make it a condition right now and have you
Yeah.
put it in the master deed, right?
Right.
So,
But
yeah, I don't think we should leave it up to them to figure out.
Mhm.
That's really the point. I think
It would be
no,
something like cans will be placed at a location is determined time to time by the DPW, depending on
Yeah, we're,
what the design of the truck is.
You know,
Left side, right side, wherever they demand. they
maybe
be
there's a
put.
plan now and it could just be put in as a regulation in the master deed so they know what the plan is rather than trying to figure it out on their own.
But I also would like a letter from the DPW that this works and how it's going to work.
Okay,
Also, too, considering, let's say, we do need all the cans on one side, even just the normal cans going out. So right now, at least for me, for my pickup, recycling and trash are the same time, right? So
Right.
you've got 2 cans per unit. And
Minimum 2 cans per unit.
exactly. And because you can buy an additional can if you want, it's not capped. So then you've got very tight parking. So once all those cans are outside on that day, and if all of them have to be moved to one side of the development, that's a lot of square feet taken up
18 cans
by
minimum.
cans. And also that enclosure we need to make sure can fit 4 cans to recycling and to, they're like mini dumpsters, pretty big. So
And that's the point, Dave, is we don't want the association to figure it out because their answer might be just put them on the street and then come pickup day, you have 20 cans lined up. You know?
that's why
went
we
through-
talked to
went
the
through that.
DPW. They did not
Yeah.
want
We
that.
didn't,
We don't want
to
that.
do that, right?
I'd like to make sure that the circulation in there works for when the cans are out. People put them out of an evening, not putting them out at midnight. So people are coming and going. Maybe some people work early in the morning too.
Okay. Other board members with questions? No? Mr. Hanson, any questions?
No.
Any questions?
Yeah, I'm looking at the latest TCC report, and we raised a couple of issues which I think have been addressed through questions of board members. One was the meeting with Public Works with regard to the trash pickup, and I think we just kind of discussed that. The other was the point that Mr. Aller made about the visitor parking stalls, and particularly on the right-hand side. And, you know, whether or not there's adequate vehicle turnaround, because I agree that it's tight. And maybe the solution would be to push it closer to the side lot line to provide some cushion there, because it's literally on the 18-foot line in the driveway. The only other question that I had, Rusty, was to go back to parking for a minute. So units 8 and 9, which are the affordables,
Right.
if you were to calculate the RSIS parking requirements strictly for those units, right?
Mhm.
A 1 and a 3 bedroom, you get, if my math is right, 4.2,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And you're providing 3, right? In the front.
Well, we went through the total calculation and
Right.
to look at the required of 26 versus the calculated of 26 and a half.
Right, but visitors aren't using individual driveways.
Right.
And literally, if you accepted the fact that that was the demand for the affordables, that they would be using part of those visitor spaces. I know how RSIS works,
Right, right. Sure.
but I think at the very least that the 3 spaces in front absolutely have to be assigned to those units, or else they're going to have a parking space.
Mhm.
I mean, the market rate units are going to have driveways and garages. It would be my strong recommendation, if the board considers, you know, any approval on this, that those, at the very least, those 3 have to be assigned.
Mhm.
Or else those units may not have the guarantee that there's a parking space, and then what do you do? Forget about Thanksgiving. I mean, the people live here have no place to park, so.
That's a good
I mean,
idea. No,
Please take that under advisement,
That
both the
would,
board
that
and
would
the applicant.
cause some internal strife.
So that's a
That's
good
all I
suggestion.
have for Rusty, Mr. Chairman.
Okay,
Affordable units in Hovnanian have assigned parking,
okay.
and there's signs up for that.
Would we have to allocate 4 spots for assigned parking for them based upon the parking requirements, or we can do it 3?
Rusty, you can comment. I believe you could do the 3.
You could do 3. Yeah, you
Yeah.
could.
You could.
And I mean, and I don't think that's, you know, I think that would kind of, even though it individually, it doesn't meet the RSIS, which was my question. If you were to assign logically 1 to the 1 bedroom, and
Right.
2 to the 3 bedroom, that there's some sort of nexus and rationale for that.
Okay.
We can do that.
And they're also right in front of the units, you know,
That
those
makes sense.
Right.
where do you want to assign them?
Right. Okay. Right. Any other questions, board members? Members of the public, any questions of this witness? Questions only at this point.
Questions? Yes, I have a question.
Come on up to the microphone, identify yourself, where you, and your address.
Hi, my name is Andre Vasachuk.
Can you spell your last name?
Ready for it? V as in Victor, ASIYSCHOUK,
Okay. And your address?
49 Highland.
Thank you. What's your questions?
My question is, since it's a very busy road, 4 lanes as mentioned before, are the residents of that complex going to be able to make a left out of it, crossing the double yellow line? Monroe Street right now, you're not allowed to make a left.
During rush hour, yes.
Right? So how are the residents going to pull in, pull out? Can they only pull in one way, pull out one way?
Okay.
And if that's the case, where are they going to turn around to go towards Lowe's, Hanover West?
Mr.
The
Sherman?
county didn't indicate any restriction on turning maneuvers. So we presented that with them, and they did not require any restrictions.
I think Monroe is twofold. It's to prevent the left lane of Hanover from backing up, and also so that nobody turns through the neighborhood to scramble around the light. You know the light at Martin?
I think you have the scenario mixed up.
Yeah, you do.
you can't make a left going Hanover West.
Oh, you can't, coming out of Monroe, you can't make a left.
Cross the double yellow line.
But there's also a sign there
You can
saying,
make a right.
but there's also a sign saying you can't turn into Monroe from,
No, you can't.
Yeah, you can. There's a left turn.
There's a left turn lane.
Yeah.
oh, they're on,
The left
Monroe.
turn
Yeah,
lane.
that's right, there is.
Yeah, so if they pull out, the
Okay.
only option for them to turn around is Highland, which is the street we're on, which a lot of people are already cutting through. There's kids on the road. There's a lot of people that try to pass the Hanover traffic. They're already flying by. I personally had a family member that was sideswiped right in front of my house, trying to pull into the driveway because the guy was trying to pass him on the left.
So there's going to be time for testimony a little later.
So just
At the
right now
end,
it's questions.
Yeah, understood.
Because I don't
Yeah.
know how they're going to turn around. And I only see the flow going down my road.
But the answer was the
The
county
county has
doesn't
not
have a
indicated any
restriction
requirement
on
for restriction. That's correct.
Okay, do we have a copy of the letter from the county?
No, Rusty has had conversations with them as we designed this, but we haven't submitted for official approval yet.
Okay.
Wanting to come to this board first, before we go there.
All right, so if the county imposed a no left turn requirement, then what? Do we have to come back here?
Well, it
Just
doesn't
wondering-
change our site. It just changes the turning movements
Right,
on a county road.
but then this witness is, the,
And there's more
member
relevance
of the
to this
public.
question.
And there's more relevance to the
his question, and
Yeah.
we that's part of what we have to address.
And a follow-up question.
Wait, see if we got an
Yeah.
answer here.
But then the issue becomes then, what's the solution?
Right,
Because whether you, no matter what, if there's no left turns into or out of, then whatever you propose for this site is going to have that sort of prohibition. So I'm not sure that it really makes any difference to the application that's here. I understand the concern, but I think with, this isn't the concern the chairman talked about, or maybe to some degree that this gentleman talked about, of people cutting through neighborhoods to avoid rush hour. This is one site with 9 units coming in and out. I don't think it's going to cause any cutting through neighborhoods.
I think the difference would be, at least from my perspective, is the variance that you're asking for is the difference between single-family homes, which here would be, let's presume, 4. So I think we're asking, what's the traffic impact difference between this proposed and as it's zoned? Specifically, given if the county were to say, that your turns are limited.
Well, Ms. Schomer, if we had single-family homes, we'd have 4 driveways onto the county. Correct?
That's correct. Yes, we would.
Okay. And there would be that's the main difference in traffic impact. We would argue that that's more of a problem than having these 9 units that come out a common driveway.
all right.
And then some of those problems then start from there. You have 4 different lots. We just talked about garbage, 4 different lines of garbage cans in front of everybody's lot.
Any more questions?
Yes, so that was the easier one. The harder one is when you're traveling Hanover West towards Lowe's, after you make a left off of Ridgedale or come off of 24, how are you going to make a left into that property? Are you going to hold up that whole lane on Hanover and back it up even further and cause even more traffic in the area? Because right now, the light on Ridgedale to make a left onto Hanover, it's backed up all the way to the post office. So
At certain times of the day, yes.
but not even discussing Ridgedale, Hanover alone, off of 24, is going to get backed up, and people are going to try to make a left into that complex.
Jomer, any comments? Response?
Again, from our discussions with the county, they didn't have any turning restrictions. It is a busy road, there's no question. But left turns in and out are not, and we have to confirm with the county and with our county planning board approval, but they've not indicated any restrictions. So again, this is a single 9-unit development. It's not a corridor. It's not a street. It's not Ridgedale Avenue. It's not an entire street where you have a lot of traffic. But
Okay. Well, shouldn't we ask for a traffic study?
that's
Do we?
maybe we will.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, Dave, do you think a traffic study is warranted for this project, 9 units?
I'll call Paul Fissinger up, or Joe Fissinger up, and I'll get his opinion on it. And I'll have Sonia send a set of plans over, or email a set of plans over, and take a look at it.
I mean, the neighbor made some valid points. You're gonna have 18 to 26 people coming out of here.
That's more than four dwellings, single family dwellings.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm with you. I understand.
Okay, any other questions?
Also, a concern that was brought up when you guys were going over the capping contamination on the site, and then saying that the 2 sections in the middle area of the property are gonna collect all the water. Isn't that gonna contaminate all the water and the runoff that's going into the public sewers that you guys are saying is gonna go into Hanover?
The porous pavement in the middle is what you're talking about, I believe.
Well,
So
that's one section, but
okay.
you said the runoff, you guys are redirecting it and then connecting those lines to the Hanover sewer system, which is gonna take that contaminated water into the public water system that's gonna have to get cleaned and go back into our faucets.
Well, first of all, it's not contaminated water. All we're talking about is surface water runoff that is going to come off the surface. You have runoff today coming off of the site. It goes down, it's uncontrolled. There's no stormwater management measures today. It runs down towards East Hanover Avenue. So we're going to collect a lot of our stormwater. We're going to reduce the amount of runoff from the site, but you will still have surface water runoff, but it's not contaminated runoff. It's just rainwater. It gets collected. Some of it would go into the the county storm sewer system. That's a storm sewer system, not the water system. It's a storm sewer system. So that's different, but it's not contaminated water.
From the sound of it, it just sounded like the area was gonna get capped and the contaminated dirt was gonna stay there. And even if it's runoff, it still might.
As I said earlier, based on what the LSRP indicated, that impacted dirt as a result of investigations, dirt that's been impacted by past activities is going to be excavated and removed. Okay. And then this also serves as a cap in addition to that. So, but there's no contaminated water coming from the site.
And then the last question is, how's the 4 to 5 foot retaining wall in the back gonna hold up the 12-foot grade?
Well, what I indicated was that there's a 12-foot difference in grade from East Hanover Avenue to the back of the property. That's the existing difference in grade. So when you come off of East Hanover, you're going to climb up. You're going to go up the driveway. You're going to drive up to the courtyard. So you're going to continue to climb up so that when you get to the back of the property, you're going to be at that point about 5 feet lower than the existing grade at the back property line. Okay, so our grade is going to be 5 feet below the existing grade. Okay, so there's a 12-foot difference existing, but we're going to climb up. So we're not going to be entirely flat. We can't be. So we're going to climb up, and when we get to the back, we're going to be still into the hill, and there'll be a 5-foot difference in grade between, for example, where those 5 parking spaces are to the rear property line. And this property and the parking spaces are lower, and then there's a wall. And I don't know, are you right behind the property?
No.
Oh, okay. Anyway, those houses behind there. Anyway, the back of those houses, they'll be higher, and the parking spaces are lower.
I just thought it was gonna be a steeper
No.
drop.
No. Sure.
Thank you. Any other members of the public with questions? Seeing none, hearing, close the public portion.
I do have one follow-up question, if it's okay.
Sure, I was going to ask any
Yeah.
board members with a follow-up questions based on this.
So based on the history of the site and the contaminated soil that will be capped and all that, when these markets, should they be approved, go to be marketed and to owners and renters, is there any representation that has to be made to the public about the history of the site, or is it just unknown to them, or is there any requirement as part of that that has to be?
It'll be part of the RAW. The LSRP has indicated there will have to be a notice in the deed.
Notice in the
There's gonna be
deed,
notice in the deed, so it'll end up in the master deed. no doubt.
but nothing more overt to let people know. So, I mean, that are
Not that
coming.
I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Yeah, can we make that a condition? Because, I don't know, because if most people, you get the title report and you get the master deed, and
I don't think it would just be in the master deed. It's probably gonna be a separate deed notice
Might
to
be.
satisfy DEP, and they have very specific language that
Okay.
they're going to want. But either way, it's going to show up in a title report that someone
Right.
may not read.
that may,
yeah,
somebody may
right.
not read, yeah.
Right.
That's a,
But it would be a special condition when they went to file, only 9 units, so they could possibly get an exemption from DCA for filing a public offering statement. But it would be a special condition with the DCA, Department of Community Affairs, when you prepare a public offering statement to put that in. So it's in bold type on the first page. It says there's a deed notice and explains what it is, if there's a public offering statement.
If,
Yeah, I say if because it's only 9 units and typically under 10, you can get an exemption. So,
thank you.
yes.
With all the comments about vehicular movement in here, has anyone considered flipping these units and having them all in the back of the site facing East Hanover Ave?
You mean put them in a line?
Single line, yeah.
We looked at that. We did look at that, and that's what I mentioned early in my testimony. I think that we had several meetings with the TCC. We had some concepts looking at that, and it was not as good a design as this. This
Okay.
really was a better design to have the internal courtyard, looking at the ends of the building, and our architect will show you, better visually what you're looking at. Instead of having one massive structure where you're facing garages and the units in one large building. But we did look at that.
Thanks.
Tends to look like a strip mall.
Oh, if it's safer.
Yeah, I think the question is,
Yeah.
functionally, aesthetics aside, functionally, would it function better being lined up in the alternative fashion?
Yeah, parking, in terms of how you then get to parking spots, you ended up with more dead end areas. The county did not want a separated entrance and exit, for example. They preferred this single access as we've shown here that I mentioned. So that was part of what we looked at when looking at that. If you had one long building, well, how do you get in? Do you want to have a separate entrance and exit? And the county said, no, they did not want to see that.
Board members, any other questions? Mr. Hanson?
No, I'm good.
Anything?
No further questions.
Okay. Should we take a 5-minute break? Shall we take a 5-minute break and then reconvene? 5-minute break. Okay, we're back on the record. Ms. Santiago, roll call.
Mr. Goldberg,
Here.
Ms. Rothman,
Here.
Mr. Williams,
Here.
Mr. Schuster,
Here.
Mr. Trachtenberg,
Here.
Mr. Woodford,
Here.
Mr. Oler.
Here.
Mr. Hanson,
Here.
Mr. Phillips,
Here.
and I'm Sonia Santiago here.
Okay, council.
Mr. Chairman, our next witness is the architect, Kevin Paul.
We're probably not going to get to your planner tonight. You realize that, right?
Just showed up. I can't just send him home.
Sure you can.
No. I see the whole time.
Now we saw you walking in. So I,
Let's
Yeah.
quickly go through the architect. Mr. McDonough is here anyway, so.
Yeah, but we're gonna have, sounds like we're gonna need traffic testimony. And, I mean, it's up to you, it's your case, but if we're gonna have traffic, then you might want
Right.
Mr. McDonough to go after that.
I might want him to come back and supplement it, because I
Okay.
know this board's agendas are pretty tight. So
Yeah.
trying to get as much in while I've had people available might be good for both of us.
okay. All right, let's get going then.
3 minutes.
Okay. Paul, would you stand, please? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
And your full name for the record, please?
Kevin Mark Paul.
Thank you.
I suspect, Mr. Paul, unlike Mr. Shummer, you're not a frequent flyer before this board. So if you could give the
No, I'm
board
not.
the benefit of your educational and professional background.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, board members, I'm a registered architect in 12 states, New Jersey being one of them. I've been involved with this type of residential project for the past 30 years. I work out of Melville, H2M's corporate headquarters, where I'm a senior partner. We support Mr. Shamra and the Parsippany office with private sector real estate projects. And I'm very happy to be here tonight.
Yeah, have you testified before boards like this? in the
I have
past?
testified before boards like this in the past, actually in New Jersey.
And is your license in New Jersey still effective at this time?
Yes, it is.
I don't have any further questions. I'd ask them to be accepted as an expert in architecture.
All right, you are.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Paul, if you'd fill in the board on what you did in this project and what the basic design layout is.
Yeah, so basically this project, these buildings are actually a response to the site and the way the site is established in terms of sloping up from Hanover to the residential properties in the rear. Contextually, very concerned about how the project is accessed, as we've already spoken about, but also making sure that it fits in with the scale and context of the existing residential neighborhood. Hence the locating the properties with the short side of the buildings to the street. So they present pretty much like a single family dwelling when you're driving 45 miles an hour, and a little larger when you're stuck in traffic. And also, we think the better use of the site relative to the idea of the court, the central court, single primary means of access, rear yards for all the units, front yards, effectively like every other suburban dwelling, driveway, garage, and access out to the street. These buildings were all built slab on grade, no basements, crawl spaces, or anything underground. As Mr. Schomer said, they step up the hill to mitigate any issues with the existing topography and to kind of benefit things like water flow, easy access from unit to garage and from garage to driveway. Okay.
Could you tell the board a little bit about some of the materials that are going to be used?
Certainly, if I can get Rusty to get up an elevation here. So these are, once again, residential in nature. So architectural asphalt roofs, porches, front porches, clapboard siding, some stone. You can see on these elevations, the short side to north elevations. Unit 1 faces Hanover, and you'll see culture stone, clapboard siding, some nice windows, architectural asphalt roof.
Siding's not vinyl, correct?
No vinyl siding. This is the cementitious hardy plank is typically what it's referred to. Requires, comes in colors that will be regulated by the HOA and is relatively low in maintenance. And kind of uniformity, if you look at the internal elevations, you'll see the garage doors with the balconies overhead. The stepping up is indicated by that small retaining wall, middle of the elevation.
Excuse me, how much of that is that step out? How high is it?
The step, I believe it's about 2 feet per unit. So we have our,
Between this and this.
yes, between the two, effectively where you see that step 2 feet. The garage floor is a little bit lower than the main floor. And then we step that up each unit on each side to mitigate that 12-foot difference from entry curb to rear wall.
You want to mark this exhibit? We didn't. This is an exhibit. Rich.
I think this will be.
Yeah, we're up to
A3.
3, I think. Sorry, yeah, A3.
Architectural renderings. yeah.
And is there a name on it?
Should be,
Bob.
all right. Going.
Exterior elevations.
Thank you. The units themselves are made up first floor, garage, entry hall, kitchen, living room, dining room, with a powder room, laundry, and mechanical space. Second floors are typically 3 bedrooms with 2 baths. And they're all very similar in layout except for the end units 8 and 9, which are a one story, 1 bedroom and a 2-story, 3 bedroom that back up to that trash container in the back where we talked about the park modifications.
A few of the units have the option of being 4 bedrooms. Could you explain to the board how that works?
3 bedrooms.
3
Oh,
bedrooms.
excuse me, 3 bedrooms.
3 bedrooms. So that, once again, so they're laid out maximum is
Don't scare us, Dave.
they're laid out for a maximum of 3 bedrooms. But the option is to pull it back to 2 bedrooms on the second floor and not go further. Some of the units actually have, you see the units with the upper glazing, not the dormers, have a potential for a loft space, which is kind of like a little bonus space underneath the roof, roof trusses.
Talk to the board a little bit about the side that faces Hanover Avenue.
So,
Let me go to a different,
yeah, do we have that?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. There it is. So the Hanover Avenue elevation, this
Different exhibit,
different exhibit, A4.
street view elevation. I didn't share it, didn't I? Go in the one side. Just did this in before. Just trying to pull that, we had an exhibit, just trying to get that pulled back up.
Okay, so this elevation shows the condition at East Hanover Street, and you'll see, once again, the buildings are effectively a mirror of each other with an entry door. And you'll see that grayish band in the back is the retaining wall at the back of the property. And these other stone wing walls separate each of the units. So as we move up towards the back of the property.
Road line.
Yeah, that dark line at the bottom is approximately the road line of East Hanover.
So from an architectural perspective, what is the importance of showing this street view?
This is really important in terms of context. So if you look at the street as a whole, once again, this reads as not as a single block of 9 apartments or 9 townhomes. It reads as a larger single-family development with 2 homes, large homes, but 2 that are, once again, more in context with the street. They are deep, they run deeper, but you don't perceive that, especially with the planting and the way the grades run when you're on the road, driving by. So it's really more about what's happening on the street front.
I don't have any further questions of Mr. Paul.
What is
I think this is A4, by the way, Mr. Oliver.
Yeah, I got A4 is the street view elevation. Yeah.
What is the dimensions of the lot as far as height and area?
Base 7.5 feet, and in terms of maximum height, by code, they have to slope down to walls no greater than 4 feet. at exterior opposite walls.
No greater than 4?
No greater than, no greater than 4 feet. So once again, it keeps that kind of loft, has to be open to the space below. And they typically range between 180 and 200 square feet. They're relatively small spaces. They're effectively what's left over from the attic under the roofs as designed.
And is there any storage in the attic?
There's storage in the attic, but once again, that's the trade-off from the loft. So if you develop the loft, you get less attic storage. But you can see the roof lines run, those gables run all the way back.
Right.
So the lofts will be in the center and your storage will be in the wings, which is pretty much typically how it's done on the residential scale.
So other than throwing a 10 or 12-year-old boy up there, it really wouldn't be a bedroom.
It doesn't meet the requirements of a bedroom.
I know it doesn't meet the requirements of a
Yeah.
bedroom, but it could be utilized as a bedroom.
It can be utilized pretty much as anything, but yeah, that's the idea of the loft. There's no door separating from the space below. It's open at the top of the stair. No closets other than the attic storage.
No secondary egress.
And no secondary egress, correct.
Well, I'm thinking board members, any questions?
On the colorized drawings, are those the colors of the materials? Do we know what, I'm trying to get a sense of what it's actually going to look like.
Yeah, that at this point, that's the color of the materials for,
Okay.
for the rendering. So obviously, at some point, we would need a board with real samples on it in terms of the
Right.
siding, the stone, the roofing, the trim.
Okay.
The color on the end, though, on the interior to the courtyard, there's a change in color between the units, correct?
Correct.
And what you're showing is representative, so this kind of peachy color.
Yeah, it's more corally than peachy, maybe, but yeah,
It's not white, it's not.
it's not white and
gray,
it's not gray. It's not brown.
It's not brown. It's got a little pink to
It's a
it.
little pink to it.
Okay.
Any other board members with questions?
Just a quick question on the affordable units. It looks like the one bedroom has a slider maybe to sort of a pad out, some sort of outdoor area pad where you can stand outside. Is it correct that the other unit is the only one that does not have an exterior space that's dedicated or allocated to it?
No, I think it has one in the rear.
On the second floor,
Well, second floor front. Can we read that plan? Yeah. just go to that. So I can't recall.
Upstairs has a balcony.
Yeah, eight has a pad outside the door. Unit 9 has a sliding door to the rear with the same, kind of a little pad facing the rear yard.
so the pad for 8 is shared by, no, I guess it's, if you're,
It's kind of an entry pad, so they're not connected, but certainly when you need to go past that door to get to your door. Right.
So 8 has a patio and 9, the upstairs would have a balcony then.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to.
This is first floor. So nine on the first floor has a slider out to a pad, right? That's the small unit.
Right.
And the larger unit has just the entry with the balcony on the second floor.
Is that the only unit with a balcony on the second floor?
No.
No, the other,
They all do.
they all have balconies on the second floor. Thank you.
Front and the back.
And then this, I'm assuming there is no storage in the affordable units because they're stacked, right? So there is no sort
There
of.
would be attic storage for the 3-bedroom unit, right?
Oh.
Limited storage on the 1-bedroom unit.
Okay, thank you.
What's the square footage of the various units?
They're approximately 2,200 square feet without the garages. First and second floor total.
Could you give me that number again, please?
2,200 square feet
Okay.
Usable space without the garage.
without the garage, correct.
Could you just elaborate on, in your testimony, you said that this application sort of fits in with the scale and context of the surrounding neighborhood.
Mhm.
When I look at an aerial view of the surrounding neighborhood and the lot sizes and all that, I actually, my optics sort of see the opposite of that, right? So can you just elaborate as to how you think it fits in with the scale and context of the neighborhood?
Once again, so if you look at the street elevations and you drive around Highland and some of the other streets, you have inline ranches, you have wide line ranches, you have traditional colonials. The traditional colonials and some of the wide line ranches have the same type of massing at the street. Obviously, if we're looking at a 50-foot wide lot with a 25-foot inline bungalow or ranch, it's a different scale. Here, the idea of breaking the buildings up, limiting the height, it's from the front, it looks like it's kind of a standard 2-story home. Okay, can't disagree. They go deep, but once again, with the proximity of the other structures surrounding them, you don't really get that unless you're walking and looking. So from a car's point of view, if you drive down that street and you see, you've got some 2 stories, some single stories, it's not out of context relative to how it presents to the street. I agree. Depth-wise, they're large structures, probably twice the size of an average existing home.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, on the statement of application from the applicant, there's a line that really stood out to me. It says the combination of commercial uses and heavy traffic volume make the site undesirable for single-family homes. So could you just elaborate?
Yes.
So why this would be?
Okay. So and listening to the testimony tonight, obviously there were issues with traffic on the street. But if you are looking at purchasing a new home and your choice is a single or a 2-family house that fronts a busy street, with limited protection, 2-car garage and 2 or 3 cars in the driveway with your neighbors all dealing with the same thing, it exacerbates everything we're talking about. When you cluster these things together, give us a single point of access and create a little community. You have 9 units where people are going to get to know each other. They're going to trip over each other's garbage cans. They're actually going to. It's like a little tiny village here. It's not 4 houses lined up on a really busy street. We do this approach quite honestly everywhere where we have enough property. Single-family homes, just aside from the fact that they usually don't provide the return on investment for the developers, they only work if you can get them off the street, away from the noise, and with a certain amount of privacy. So you can't in a 7,500 square foot lot, you can't give that to anybody because it just doesn't work. So as we kind of look at how people are using their private residences now, this is kind of the new model. It's not even new. It's been around. It started with garden apartments 60 years ago, and it's kind of coming back, except we're not building 40 or 50 or 60 units with tons of parking. A lot of municipalities have adopted form-based codes that eliminate the need for parking because they want to encourage walkable neighborhoods. Okay, so you're gonna see this. This is kind of coming. I think this is a sensitive way. Once again, there are a series of variances. There always are issues relative to this because it doesn't exist on the street as it sits now. But I believe it's really a really good application for this site relative to how housing is in terms of housing shortages, with the flexibility of the number of units and the sizes of the space, and the fact that it also takes into account the affordability issue.
Thank you for elaborating.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other board members with questions?
I was wondering on the side that you're showing, what is the height of that building? And could you kind of compare that to some of the adjacent buildings?
So
It looks very tall.
it looks tall.
In comparison to what's on the street.
Yeah, and once again, if you look at a typical two-story house, this is a relatively low roof pitch.
Mhm,
So if you're looking at the height from grade, that heavy dark line
mhm.
to the eave, you're looking at about 17 feet, 18 feet with structure, and you're going to go another 6 feet to the first ridge. So you're talking about maybe 28 feet to the top of the other ridge. Once again, without context, it's hard to pinpoint it. And maybe what we can do is, if we come back, we can give you a broader street view to show some other relative structures. Across the street, the building across the street, the commercial building for the town is probably a little taller in certain sections because just the service garage.
Mhm.
So, yeah, once again, if you look at this little person standing in the doorway, that's a little person because that door is 6'8". So, and that entablature over the front entryway is basically 8.5 feet off the ground. So if you take that and kind of bring it up, it's 16. So not quite as big. And it's also, if you look at the plan, it's layered. So there's a portion that projects out and it kind of steps back and then it kind of wraps around the corner on both sides. And even in the courtyard, there's a vacillation of which softens it up a little bit.
So how high are the ceilings going to be? 9 foot, 10 foot?
Once again, it's the market. The market loves a 9-foot ceiling. On the first floor with an 8-foot ceiling on the second floor.
Is that what you're planning on
That's
doing?
typically what we're planning on doing. Yes.
Board members, any questions? Mr. Hanson, any questions? Mr. Phillips?
Can you put up the rendering showing the view from the courtyard again?
That one, Paul?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm noticing here that you're just looking at the base of the building, the first floor of the building, that you use, I guess it's the cultured stone.
Mhm.
And then if I look at the elevation from Hanover, it seems to be sort of a split between the hardy plank or cementatious siding and the cultured stone. And I'm just wondering, why perhaps you might not have carried more of the stone in the front facade.
Aesthetic type of thing, and a little bit of cost. More time is spent in the courtyard looking at these, and will be spent on the sidewalk looking back at.
Yeah.
Once again, those views are, people are kind of zipping by. So while it looks good, we prefer to kind of provide more texture for the people who are actually experiencing it, getting out of the cars and walking around that court.
But we're also obviously concerned at how this is viewed from the public realm.
Without a doubt.
Can you just go back to the?
I think there's one on this.
Yeah, so the upper left would be the street elevation.
Right. Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Members of the public, any questions of this witness? Seeing none, hearing none, close the public portion. Board members, any other questions? Okay, we can start your next witness.
Brings to Mr. How long will we have, Mr. Chairman, for Mr. McDonough? Till 10?
10.
Don't we get
You're there, I don't know where
You sure about that?
28 and a half minutes.
You sure about that?
Mr. Chairman, did anyone ask about mail delivery?
No,
Non-fashion.
no one's asked about mail delivery.
Amazon delivery.
Hmm?
Amazon delivery.
No, there aren't any allowed.
You're on.
Thank you. Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
John, your full name for the record, please.
Hi, everyone. My name's John McDonough. That's spelled MC, capital DONOUGH.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yeah,
McDonough,
Mr.
is
McDonough's
your
been
license, your professional planning license currently in force, in effect?
Yes, on both the state and national level as well under AICP.
And beyond that, Mr. Chairman, I assume we'll waive having to go through his credentials?
We will.
So, as a professional planner, Mr. McDonough, if you'd first just tell the board a little bit about what you did to prepare for tonight.
My preparation is somewhat unusual because I've been passing this site for 30 years, just about every day. This is my running route in the morning. I go to that YMCA, I run down Horse Hill, then I run down Ridgedale, come back Hanover. So I'm getting slower over time, so I get to see this site for a longer duration as I go. But I have seen this site. I think we all know what it was. I think we all know what the area was with all of those industrial sites and the spectacular transformation that's taking place out there. Kudos to good planning. And this is another link or a continuum in that positive transformation with this really nice boutique development that the applicant is proposing on what has been a eyesore property for way too long. And with that, we think there's sound, practical planning reasoning in terms of what the applicant is doing here. Again, with this very small scale multifamily development on what is a transitional lot between all of that non-residential development that's happening both to the east and to the west on Hanover Avenue, working our way to some of the lower density residential that you see as well. And I took some pictures today out there right when that storm was coming through. We couldn't get the drone in the air today. There was some sort of presidential block. Usually we like to give the board some good context, but I think everybody knows what's happening out there. And I think everybody knows how the land physically integrates and where this site sits in the context of that. But we're going to give you some ground photographs just to show what the property looks like and why we think the site is suitable from a contextual standpoint in terms of this transitional aspect, and also from a condition standpoint in that you have a piece of land that sort of nestles into the hillside there, where you've got good buffering, good shielding topographically and vegetatively to separate this particular pocket from that residential development that's behind it. So, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'll hand out a packet.
Sure.
Dave, I think we're up to A5.
I believe that's what it is. And John, how many pictures are in that packet?
I think there's 4. And I got that for Paul over there.
A5 this one?
A5.
So the A5 photos of the site.
Yes. And it's actually 4 photographs. And these are 4 photographs that I took today. I think it was around 9:30, 10 o'clock or so. Again, it's a little overcast. That was when that storm was coming through. So does everybody have this? Am I going too fast? Okay. So the first view, I'm standing over by the county garage, looking across Hanover Avenue. So I'll be looking to the south from this vantage point, maybe southwest, if you will. And you can see the subject property with that ugly fence in the front and that vacant land. I remember this with all of the debris out there, whether it was a junkyard, a scrapyard, whatever it was. It's now been cleaned up to the extent that that's not there. But again, it's a site that's been sitting vacant and underutilized for a long time. And as the whole area starts to transform around it, this lot sort of stands out as the problem lot that's not getting fixed. So a little bit of a blight, vacant land that has sat there for quite some time. Not formally designated as an area in need of redevelopment, but certainly hitting what we would consider many of the criteria there. Unsightly, not functioning. It is zoned for single-family dwellings, which we think would be problematic because you're going to have driveways and cars potentially backing up to what we know East Hanover Avenue is as a multi-lane roadway. You also get a sense from this vantage point of the way the landform works, and you look at those homes in the back there that are perched up. So to the extent that this development is going to stay on a plane with East Hanover Avenue, these homes, these new townhouses are not going to stick up like a sore thumb, if you will. And really, we're only going to be looking at maybe the top floor piercing above that fence line that you see in the background there. So the landform works very well to accommodate the development. As you start to work your way to the west here, that's where you start to see those smaller lot residential development. And then as you start to work your way to the east, you've got the Mavis, you've got the acupuncture facility, which is something that was recently transformed from residential to non-residential use, the car wash, and then, of course, we work our way down to the corner there, where we know the transformation that's happening on both sides, including the IHOP, the TJ Maxx, and that whole shopping center there. Interestingly, as we work our way a little bit further to the west, that's where you have the whole redevelopment of the Menin complex, which has this nicely commingled mix of multifamily development and non-residential development as well. I think proof positive that you can establish this commingling of uses in close proximity along this stretch of roadway without creating any substantially adverse impacts. So that first page just shows you more or less the condition of the property, why we think it's well suited for the development. The next view just shows the character of the area if you lived here with a single family home. This next view is basically what you'd be seeing across the highway, the county garage, which is always busy, is always active. And then further to the east, you can see the new shopping center that has emerged at the corner, which, as we all know, was a dead industrial site for many, many years. And that's what I took a picture of in frame 3. I just walked down a little bit more to the east, the TJ Maxx Home Goods and the whole shopping center that has emerged on the corner of Horse Hill and East Hanover Avenue. And just to show on, I'll say the Morris Township side of the road, frame number 4 shows, again, the transforming nature of the area as well. You have some converted residential uses, including the acupuncture facility. There's, I believe, a contractor facility beyond that. You hit the Mavis, the car wash, and work your way down to the garden supply on the corner. And then, of course, highlighting the transitional nature of the lot, you can see the residential uses in the background, which would continue to the right or to the east from this particular vantage point. So with all of that said, we think from a pure physical planning standpoint, the predicate is there. Also, the testimony of the witnesses before me to establish that this site is well suited to accommodate the development that's before the board. The primary relief that the applicant is asking the board to move on in the form of 2D variances are interrelated here. I think it's, from my standpoint, pretty obvious that multifamily attached dwellings make good planning sense here. Again, given that transitional nature of the lot. Interrelated to that, we do have density, and if you take your floor area or your lot area per family requirement, if I'm calculating it right, would equate to a density of approximately 4.5 dwelling units per acre. The applicant is asking the board to move on 9 dwelling units per acre, 7 market, and then the 2 inclusionary as well, which we think provides a public benefit as well. And more importantly, nicely fits within the context of the site. You've got that good buffering around it. You've got adequate capacity to park it, to water it, and to sewer, which is really the core aspect of a density application and a density test as to whether the site can accommodate any problems associated with that additional density. I know the board had some concerns about the left movement out. I can tell you going to that ShopRite every day, that allows for lefts out, and there are gaps there where one can certainly get across, and there's a lot more cars going over to the ShopRite, I'm sure, than this particular development. So there's some, I'm not a traffic expert, but I can tell you anecdotally, if you will, there's some real world proof positive that lefts out can be accommodated without substantially adverse impacts on East Hanover Avenue. In terms of the justification for the D1 relief on the positive side, we see multiple purposes of zoning being advanced here, including purpose A under NJSA 40:55D-2, promotion of the general welfare. Again, because the site is particularly suitable for the use by virtue of its condition, being ideally suited to accommodate the mass and scale of the development that's before the board. Good balance, good proportionality in terms of the way the site is laid out. It makes good planning sense. with the courtyard in the middle, the two buildings on the side, oriented sideways to the roadway so that the longer access of the building appears in the interior of the site, not along the public realm on East Hanover Avenue. So it will sort of continue that massing, if you will, of the single-family homes that we start to see as we work our way to the west. Additionally, the site is particularly suitable for the use by virtue of the condition of the surrounding landscape, given the fact that there is a variety of land uses. We've got predominantly non-residential on one side, we've got smaller lot residential on the other, and that's a very logical progression to incorporate higher density residential development, which is what this applicant is delivering. We also see the advancement of Purpose G, the planning goal to provide for a variety of housing options according to the needs of all New Jersey citizens. Not everyone wants to live in a single-family house. Not everyone wants to live in an apartment complex. This provides another option as well. We do have some multifamily development just down the street emerging, again, with the Menon complex as well. So that's, in my view, an indicator of demand. We've also got the advancement of Purpose I, the promotion of a desirable visual environment, because the site is going to incorporate some very aesthetic, high quality, well articulated buildings and a landscape plan that will help the built environment blend into the natural environment. And this is really going to add value and quality to the site, not only functionally, but certainly visually as well. And then finally, the advancement of Purpose M, our planning goal for the efficient use of land, taking a site that is previously disturbed, essentially previously cleared. This is not one of the wooded lots that we see in your community. I'll say ripe to accommodate redevelopment, and in that regard promotes the planning goal for efficient use of land. It is also not considered good planning to have land lying stagnant. This is going to reverse that ongoing stagnation, revitalizing the site, pulling people into an area, including persons of low and moderate income, where they have excellent accessibility to public amenities such as shopping amenities and parks and the like that are abundant in the area. So with all of that said, we think the positive criteria are met here with respect to the use relief that the applicant is asking the board to move on. Interrelated to that, we'll carry all of those use benefits down to the density variance as well, that the density being proposed is necessary to effectuate what I see as a boutique type of development. You heard the commentary about creating a sense of community here and not isolation. We think the applicant has struck a good balance, as all planning is about balance, in providing a critical mass to create a sense of community without overdeveloping the site. No relief related to parking or the like here. In terms of the lower level C relief, we do have a front yard setback variance of 21 feet, where 25 feet would be the minimum that's required. In the context of the overall road streetscape, if you will, we don't think these buildings are going to stand out in comparison to the other buildings on the street. There is good variety along the streetscape, and as you heard through Mr. Schomer's testimony, there are mitigating measures as well with the landscaping that's being proposed.
In fact, allowing the shorter front yard actually increases to some degree the minimum in the backyard. So you're not just at 25 feet, correct?
It's a balance, yes. We're favoring the back over the front and asking for the relief in the front so we can maintain that separation in the back. Likewise, the coverage at 60.6%, where 55% is the maximum that's allowed. Again, all goes towards the planning intent to provide a quality living environment, adequate parking, safe circulation, and we think the applicant has struck an effective balance here where the coverage relief is necessary to effectuate an overall good project. Counterbalancing that under the C2 test, we believe the relief can be granted here without any substantially adverse impacts. We have a good stormwater design system here that has been designed to accommodate the additional impervious coverage on the property and account for stormwater quality and quantity measures to mitigate the impact of that coverage relief.
as a planner, when you consider the coverage, is the fact that the building coverage is compliant have any significance?
Yes, but that's your massing control for sure, and the fact that the building coverage will be on par with what the ordinance envisions. Again, we're not creating an overdevelopment in the context of what is physically visible in terms of the forms along the streetscape. And then lower level design exception related to the slope disturbance. These are environmental controls, somewhat of a hardship, if you will, working with that previously disturbed land in the back. We think whenever we're dealing with slope disturbance, the essence of satisfying the test is stability. Mr. Schomer has designed a plan here that will be designed in accordance with sound soil erosion and sediment control standards, and is certainly subject to that outside agency jurisdiction. And then lastly, relief related to the parking stall size of 9 by 18, where 10 by 20 would be the minimum required. Typical for residential development, I think we can look to the statewide RSIS standard as a basis for that relief as being reasonable and appropriate as well. With that said, we think the statutory tests for all of the relief are met here, the higher level D relief and the
John,
lower level
one piece I think I don't remember you hitting is the buffer in the back. The buffer is 8 feet as opposed to 10 feet.
relatively minor de minimis deviation. The applicant has provided good landscaping in the back, and also we've got that vertical separation. The fact that this building and this development is going to be nestled, the lack of horizontal separation is mitigated by the increased vertical separation as well. So we'll fold that in as again, looking at the application as a whole. We always look at your master plan, very well written, 2017, 100-page report, which does recognize throughout the report, as I read it, that East Hanover Avenue is somewhat different. And there's recommendations in there to take a look at the zoning and the uses along the corridor, given the multi-lane roadway, the higher speeds, and the fact that it is presently zoned for single-family dwellings. I know personally I have gotten other use variances along the corridor as well, based on that aspect of the master plan as well. So I think that's something the board can give some deference here as well in terms of policy considerations for uses other than single family along this particular roadway.
Do you see any substantial negative detriment to the public good or to the zone plan?
Based on all of the testimony and for all of the reasons that I've just given, and certainly the physical characteristic of this site, all variances, as we know, are supposed to relate to a specific piece of property. That's the board's charge. Otherwise, you're acting, as you know, in the capacity of the governing body and creating a rezone. Putting multifamily on this particular piece of property, I think, is pretty clear that it's not opening any sort of a precedent for more multifamily along your RA7 zone district. This clearly relates to a specific piece of property which needs help and is sort of in the bullseye between higher density non-residential development and lower density residential development.
So the answer is no.
The answer is no substantial impairment to the zone plan or ordinance or the public at large. And I think with that, I'll pause. I know I have limited time and may actually be coming back. We'll see. That's all I have on direct.
Okay. Board members, questions?
You were able to comment, I know you're not a traffic expert nor do you present here as one, but you were able to comment on the left out. Any commentary on the left in? And your thoughts on that? In terms of backing up, but we had a resident earlier this evening concerned about, a busy East Hanover Avenue, people stopping to turn left into that development and any collateral impacts that might have.
I know there are left-ins allowed into the ShopRite as you work your way east. I see it happen a lot because I'm waiting to take the right out or the left out. So it does happen, and it has, I'm not aware of any safety aspects. It has not gone away. That left out and left in is still there. And I see it on a daily basis. And also, although I don't see it operate, I think it operates later in the day, but I did do work on it, is the acupuncture facility as well. And I'm not aware of any, that's next door to the subject. I'm not aware of any restrictions on left out or left in.
Thank you.
Oh, you had mentioned, kind of creating a mini neighborhood and how these developments, have access to shopping and neighborhoods. And I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if there's a way to make a pedestrian back exit onto Cedar Street, because if you walk down Cedar, you can access public parks there. And I feel like, this development that's being proposed is very much about East Hanover Avenue. And I love that there's a sidewalk that you're putting in, and hopefully the township one day will run a sidewalk all the way down. I like the idea that people who live there, if there were continuation of the sidewalk, could safely cross to shop across the street or continue to walk and maybe even walk to ShopRite. Who knows? But right now they can't walk to the neighborhood in which they actually should be a part of. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can get access so that people, if they live there and they've got kids, could safely walk to those playgrounds in that neighborhood. I think that would make it a part of the community instead of isolated on East Hanover Avenue.
A very interesting question, and certainly would endorse connectivity. I don't know if there's physical reasons why it can't wrap around there. I think I see children walking that street when the bus comes down.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't want kids on East Hanover Avenue.
no doubt. Although the bus does stop on East Hanover Avenue.
Sure,
which
but
is
they're boarding the bus.
right.
I'm talking about taking kids or kids in a stroller or kids by the hand and walking. What would be out your back door to the neighborhood in which if this were a single family home, particularly the one that's on the paper lot street, the paper street that's been abandoned, they would have access to the rest of the neighborhood. So if we can provide that access for pedestrians, I think that would be
Looks like we're
huge
going to end
amenity
up coming back. And we'll look into that.
Okay.
It's a physical thing that Mr. Schomer has to take a look at.
Okay. I think that would be a very good addition, though.
Okay. Any other board members with questions? Something came up, and I don't know if it's you or probably Mr. Schomer, but what about deliveries to the premises? Like Amazon, mail?
Again, I'm speaking more anecdotally than anything. I like the fact that you can pull off into a courtyard. We see many vehicles stopping right on Hanover Avenue, including buses, which I personally don't like. But what I like about the way this has been designed is it does have a pull-off.
Rusty, is there anything you can add to that with regard to the usability of the courtyard by delivery vehicles?
Well, also mail, where are the mailboxes going to be?
Mailboxes are in the site. If you look on the plan, there's a common mailbox on one of the little islands of vegetation there, as I recall, on the right side.
Okay. I don't think I saw that. I'm not coming that way anyway.
It says cluster mailbox on the
Okay.
right-hand side, about halfway down.
Oh, okay. I get the small version.
Yeah, you can't read
I
those.
can't read that shit.
That's why I have them send me this.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other questions from board members? Mr. Phillips, any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, and then I think it would be the appropriate time. I do want to provide some context about the zoning and master plan.
Okay, yeah, I was
If
going to
you'd like
ask you
me to
about
do
that.
that now, and I'd like to provide it for the board and also have Mr. McDonough potentially address it. I don't know if he's coming back, and I don't know if he needs to do it if we're stopping at 10, but
We're stopping at 10.
but
so-
I'm happy to start the comments, questions.
Sure, why don't we get through you and we'll ask members of the public and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay. So just that I understand it, John, your testimony is that you don't believe that the single family under the RA7 is appropriate here.
It's not appropriate here.
Okay. So I want to provide some context for the board and for you on the master plan. So in 2007, there was
Swear
a,
him in if he's gonna.
You solemnly swear that the testimony you will give to this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I
So
do.
help you God. Thank you.
in 2007, there was a master plan reexamination. It was not done by me, it was done by someone else. And in that reexamination, they actually had a recommendation to look at the Hanover Avenue corridor. And essentially, my memory serves me, it was from Ridgedale to MLK. They noticed it was in transition. They noticed that there were some older single-family houses largely along the corridor with some mix of non-residential uses. And I think they wanted to determine whether or not that worked. I prepared the 2017 reexamination. And as part of that work that I did with the planning board, we revisited this issue of the corridor and what's appropriate. And I will tell you that the planning board acknowledged that single family was problematic going into the future, basically because you're on a busy highway. Most of the houses had been there for some time. And the issue was, do you want to continue to advocate for single family? And ultimately, they chose to leave it as is. But the planning board did acknowledge that there are problems with single family, and particularly future single family along that corridor. The reason that the board did not make any recommendations as to zoning changes was that if you looked at the properties in that corridor, the characteristics were small lots, diverse ownership, and lots with a lack of depth to really do all that much. And also, importantly, there was residential behind it with all those physical conditions. And the board, for example, was concerned about protecting the integrity of the residential neighborhood behind it, which is why no consideration was ultimately given to changing this to non-residential, to retail, right? There was a lack of depth, whatever retail was going to be too close to the residential. So the planning board basically put that to bed and said, keep the RA7 zoning, even though they acknowledged that single family might be problematic. So to some extent, it was, if someone wants to come in before the zoning board and make an application, make your case to the board. So with that foundation, John, what I'd like, if you can, and again, I don't know if you're going to do it now or if you come back, but I think it's important with that foundation to indicate why, in your opinion, this site, relative to other properties along the corridor, in the same side of the corridor, which is the Morris Township side, is sort of so particularly suited for this use.
Sure.
And also, similarly, I think you need to provide a little bit more testimony on the reconciliation under Medici. Again, why this site, given the fact that the master plan and zoning remains RA7. And the last thing is, you talked a little bit about the density, but I'd like you to just embellish that if you could, because the density is more than double what the zoning allows. It's just slightly over double. And most of the residential on this side, the same side of the street, the density is pretty much consistent with the underlying RA7. So those three issues, if you can address, and again, if you're going to come back, that's great. If you want to give it a shot now, that's fine as well. That's up to the board.
My sense is I'd like to see him come back to testify on that, because we are going to see more testimony from Mr. Schomer, in all probability. And there's all those things that the applicant is going to provide to the board, and given those submissions, maybe it changes the nature of his testimony a little bit. And I'd like to be able to have the board and the public benefit from that. Any other opinions on the board? As far,
I think it'd be better to have,
Yeah.
because that way the public can also have time to reply while it's fresh in front of them.
right. So we're going to hold off on any questions from the public now as to this witness. Okay? So when he comes back, they can ask questions not only about the subsequent testimony, but this testimony.
Okay.
And you're responsible for reminding me of that.
Good note.
All right? So with that, where are we going?
Have to select the next available date.
Okay.
I am not here in April, and
Nor am I.
Paul's not here
Not
in
here
April.
in April. That will put us then on the next available meeting of
May.
May. Which is May 20th.
What is it?
May 20th.
I have an application on March 25th. We're making revisions to that application. Possible to put it on for that date in the event our revisions aren't done? That way.
You do one or the other?
All right.
Yes, in fact, before you leave, there's a letter here that we're going to go conclude this, and then we'll address that letter. Yeah. I don't see a problem with that.
I don't see a problem with that.
Carry to that. That way, if that one isn't ready, I'll use that slot.
And we'll just make an announcement.
Yeah,
that-
and then at the March 25th meeting, if your other application proceeds and this one doesn't, we'll make that announcement, and members of the public could always call ahead
Find
to
out.
Sonia and find out
Yeah,
if
I'll
it's
let
on or
Sonia
not.
know before the meeting.
Yeah,
So you want to be carried to March 25th meeting?
yeah. So it would be either that application or the Ewing application. All right,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
No further need for notice.
Yeah, so
No further
for
notice.
members of the public, this meeting is being adjourned at this point. It will continue perhaps on March 25th, March 25th at 7 o'clock in this room. I would suggest that you contact Sonia, say a day or so, well, it's a Monday, so that Friday before or that Monday morning, and she can let you know if this
Monday
application
morning.
is actually being heard on Monday morning, she said, if it's being heard that night, or if Mr. Brady's other application is being heard. If this application is not being heard on March 25th, a new date will be assigned to it that night. Okay? And you don't have to be here to find out the new date. You can always make a call or check the agendas online, or you get to watch us on YouTube or whatever this is on anymore. I don't even know. It's on Zoom.
Zoom.
Okay. So
Yes.
many things.
Do we need any extensions?
If you need
Potentially.
one, I'll certainly provide it.
So why don't we extend through May 30th?
Okay.
So extension of time through May 30th. Next hearing date here is March 25th at 7 o'clock in this room. There'll be no further notices from the applicant about it.
I'll send a letter to Sonia about the extension.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so that matter is concluded.
I've got a list of homework items that I will.
Yes, I can go over those with you tomorrow or
Okay.
whatever. Okay. So that matter's concluded. You're good. All right.
We're off the record.
I just,
Thank
yeah, before we go to whatever might be next, you sent us a letter, Dave, on Ewing, saying extension of time to act until March 26th. Okay, so not a new date, just, okay. All right, so just so we know, on the 25th, if this isn't going forward, we need an extension for that, okay? I think we're good. All right, okay, thanks, everyone.
And Ewing, is that the one with the other attorneys involved? No.
That's 40.
Springbrook,
Yeah, that's Springbrook. No, there's,
No.
that's the one with the addition to.
Octagon, the
Yeah.
Octagon room.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Breyer, yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
good. Thanks.
And will we be hearing from Mr. Vinci, the traffic, that was one of the, was he going to write a report or?
Dave is going to contact Mr. Fishinger, find out if he thinks a traffic report is required.
Plans and ask them
Yeah.
to do a written report.
And
Thank
Dave
you.
will communicate that to you as necessary.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other items?
We have one other item, is a draft of the
Annual report.
annual report that's,
So, just like what just happened here today made me write a note on your draft of your annual report. just
Right.
to give it some thought. And that is, the checklist items.
right,
So as Sam brought up before, there was no DEP application filed yet. Some towns require certain things from DEP, at least an application be filed, so it's at least moving along. And the other thing is that they didn't file a county planning board application, and some towns require county planning board applications to be filed at the same time that the site plan is filed with the town. So, you could give that some thought, put it in your annual report and suggest to the township committee, and planning board, to amend the checklist items so that those things happen.
right.
Right.
And we talked about having professional planners submitting reports.
In writing.
Right, we
Right.
should include that also.
Yeah.
Especially with the DEP stuff, because, to know,
Can you
I
put
dealt
that
with,
in and send it to me?
I will. I will make
Connor's
some-
Junkyard
revisions
in
on this.
Morristown
and send it
on
to you,
Early
okay?
Street, and it took years to remediate
to
that
Rich
site,
also.
years, to get a no further action letter. And so to have some basis of understanding of how long could a remediation of this site take also influences your thoughts about hearing, if it's going to be 3 years and we're making a decision now, how much is that area going to change in 3 years? We're seeing so much change.
Right.
The project might be better heard and better for them to be heard after they've cleaned it.
Right,
So I feel like it's important with these sites
Yeah.
because as we progress, these types of sites, the contaminated, the steep slopes, the last scraps that you can develop are going to be the ones that we're hearing more.
Well,
Right.
yeah, because that's all that's left.
Exactly.
right,
Yeah.
So to have the
We're
data
already
up
there.
front
Yeah.
would be helpful.
Yeah, we're already there.
that's a good thought, yeah.
It's also gonna free up our time.
Exactly.
There's all the other needs of
Exactly.
residents that are pretty straightforward cases most of the time.
Correct.
Right.
Right, because who knows what's underneath there.
I saw in
Somehow,
pictures that there's a test well out there. So can we have the data? Can we have some data?
yeah.
It is listed with DEP. What is on the site?
Well,
I
if
heard
it's,
some dinosaur bones.
La Brea, it's
I
hard.
think
it is not within this board's jurisdiction. It's strictly state DEP has complete jurisdiction over that. And, it's the applicant's choice to go forward with us first. And if he can't get what used to be called a no further action letter, right? If he can't get that, then he'll have to come back with another plan, maybe a commercial plan, maybe a retail, who knows? Because
Right.
it's a different standard, it's a lower standard than would be for residential.
Residential.
So You know, it's his, he has to, I'm just suspecting, but he must have some level of comfort from his LSRP that they'll get it, some reasonable time frame. And remember, when you grant a site plan and they file for preliminary and final, they would get 2 years of protection because it's final, right? For zone changes, and they can get 3 consecutive 1-year extensions for a total of 5 years against zone changes. Right, so they would have it for 5 years and they would be ready to go.
Could spend 3 of that
less,
with the
perhaps.
DEP.
It may be, but it's still, then they have it and then they can go, right?
Right.
I'm just saying, I think from our perspective, let's say those 3 years were spent cleaning up and then we saw the proposal. That makes it so that maybe in those 3 years, the next door neighbor's property turned into, I don't know, a Walmart. I don't know, but change is happening rapidly in that corridor. And to make sure that we're
Right.
approving something that is going to continue to be in line with what's happening in these areas.
Well, the way your checklists are now,
Right.
application's complete
Yep.
and they submitted it, we have to hear it.
Can we make it, or is this something that the governing body would have to decide? Is that
Governing, it has to
you
be by
can't
ordinance.
bring a dirty site
Yeah,
to one of our boards? Is that legitimate?
no,
Okay,
because it's not in our jurisdiction.
okay,
You know, but the governing body by ordinance can say, you know, put it in a checklist and say you need to submit, not necessarily have it approved already, but at least submit that application
yeah.
so that it's proceeding simultaneously and it's at least you have some comfort level that it's going. I'm not aware of any town that requires that though on, you know, what might be a dirty site. You see it all the time on DEP permits itself.
Right.
Wetlands, that kind of stuff, LOIs, but I haven't seen that for a site that needs a cleanup. No. So,
Okay.
but to require it has to be on the checklist.
Okay. So I will,
Good.
I will redraft this. I was gonna send a copy to you and to Sonia. And after you approve it, if I have to make any other changes, then we can
Okay.
send it out to all the rest of the board members.
Okay.
For the next meeting.
Yeah, for the next
Put it
meeting.
back on the agenda.
Yep, put it back on the agenda.
Okay.
All right.
Motion to adjourn?
You're allowed to make that now.
Motion to adjourn?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.